Hi, everybody. This is Aurora. This class is called Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. Today is level 1, lesson 16, and it's all about the death journey. Before I jump into the curriculum, I would like to tell everyone that you are witnessing the end of an era on the world stage and the end of an era on a smaller stage because my clothing business is going to have to totally change and get reconfigured as things are moving forward. Basically, the new tariff situation that is coming out of the United States affects me greatly because the company that manufactures my clothing is located in Hong Kong. The excessive tariffs are affecting that company, and they contacted me by email just a couple of days ago to say that they will no longer be able to be doing business. The cutoff date was going to be like the end of April, but they literally emailed me again this morning, and they said that their cutoff date is now April 11th. So I had already sent out an email to people who are a part of the mailing list for this class that if they were interested in a particular item of clothing of this design, of the things that I presently have available in either my Etsy shop or my website, my personal website, which is flyingrainbowlasagna.com, that you had to order now because although I might very likely will make more clothing items in the future, these particular items will no longer be available. So that's now April 11th as the cutoff date. That's like in 2 days. So pretty much this is my message to you. If you guys had an interest in ordering any of my clothing over the years, and if you haven't done so, you can try, send me your orders and I will put them through and I will try to get things in within their parameters. But if there's a problem, then I would simply refund the money to you. So if it's important to you, please order now. And I didn't want any of this to sound like some kind of crazy Eddie going out of business sale, like order now, supplies are limited. But order now, supplies are not limited, but time is very limited. So yes, so that and what does that feel like to me? So let me share a little bit of this because this is counts as energetic weather report regarding world events before we jump into the curriculum, which of course I always will relate to our ongoing ascension experience and world events as well. Where's my picture pages? Wait. Before we get going, sorry, I have to balance precariously over here. I turn off camera and get over here with this important stuff. Oh, I needed to have all of my picture pages to be able to talk about things because of the climate that we live within. And here, these are most of the things that I have to talk about here. I'm sure that people who are YouTube only viewers, people who would like to watch this class, but you're not formally a part of things or on my Patreon, I'm sure you guys all realize that my stuff got taken down from last week. And that was because of the topic that I was talking about, which was cupcakes. And apparently YouTube didn't like my cupcake recipe at all. So that I had to host on Vimeo. So of course, the people that are on my email list got the backup archive, but the people who are used to watching me only on YouTube did not get to see what's going on YouTube. So that's because even with my picture pages, they did not enjoy what I was talking about. So c'est la vie, and it takes all kinds and all of the other euphemism and aphorisms I can possibly come up with. Not even officially in the curriculum here yet today, but there's actually one other cool fun thing. So basically to synopsize, check out my online shop if you haven't already and get the things that you want now if it's important to you. And then on a celebratory note, I just released more new music. This new album is called Cosmic Law Enforcement. And I have literally been so busy is not even the word, but entirely focused with all of my ongoing lasagna energy at helping to influence and shift and guide world events in what's going on with the economic restructuring that I didn't even upload it to Bandcamp yet. So right now it's out on YouTube. You can listen with ads. It is also on all the streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple Music and everything like that. But I usually make sure that it is on my Bandcamp, where that's a place where you can listen ad free. And of course, you can buy it directly from me to support me as an artist. It's a coming. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm spending so much of my time, like I said, positively influencing world events. So with my attention and with my energy and with my dance. So energetic weather report has everything to do with what's been going on for the past 5 years or so since the worldwide health crisis of 2019, 2020, which I allude to quite frequently in this class. But that could be considered a type of, I don't have this written down, I'm looking down because I do say artificial intelligence in this class because that's something that those are search terms that are palatable to YouTube. It won't strike your video for saying that. But as a time when artificial intelligence really came um, uh, to be an attempted power takeover in the human hierarchy. I hope that it's okay that the algorithm will not have a problem with me saying that either. Um, Basically, you know how I talk about the planetary invasion that happened in ancient concurrent Atlantis. Well, this time and place is a fractal microcosm. Like here's the shell of time that is Atlantis, and then inside of there is the smaller shell of time that we live within now. And we faced very, very similar challenges. Back then, there was an artificial Merkaba that was deployed in this time and place. It's this force field that has been deployed. And although the perilous events of that time are not inevitably going to be repeated in this time, we don't have to have negative time loops and you don't have to think about it in that way. There are parallels and allegories, including, or analogies, including artificial intelligences attempting to take over and control human neurologies in both circumstances. And so what I consider was happening in 2020 was a planetary invasion that also was a biological invasion. And I bring this up because the echo of the old world is still reverberating from 2020 onward. 2020 was actually supposed to be a time when we were ascending, which means moving out of materialism and moving into a level of personal empowerment and divine connection, where each individual recognizes how directly your mind, your perception, and your observership, and your pineal gland and your esoteric force field are all directly connected to your reality, claiming the empowerment of that energy field, and then consciously creating reality. But what happened instead was a different force field was deployed here that made it like kryptonite to Superman, made it feel as if your superpowers had drained away and as if you were an ordinary, vulnerable mortal. And that artificial, false hallucination has been held up by that force field for the past 5 years. The AI and the artificial hallucinatory force field also upheld certain habits of economy, the structure of world economies, the habitual postures of the way humans have been doing it for a very long amount of time were upheld. Things like the stock market, things like the housing market, meaning not just residential properties, but properties that are also used for investments, like in, whatever, second homes, vacation homes, apartments, things like that. Let's name some other things. I will also tell you that I do not have a background in finance. Find money to be a strange alien concept. My face says it all, really. No, I came here with very little comprehension of money or money skills or anything like that. And it's been an enormous journey for me to be able to even be functional in this world, the former paradigm, the carcass that I'm encouraging everyone to come out of. No, I had to learn, just like you guys probably learned when you were like a kid or a teenager, like how to have a bank account. I had to learn like how to have a bank account. I had to even learn like what money was. I had to learn how to count. I had to learn all these different things. So yeah, none of it was natural to me at all. And I certainly did not know about bigger things like the mortgage, the world of mortgages or real estate or things like that. I didn't come up with the right word for it there, or a stock market or cryptocurrency. I didn't know about any of those things and really have not focused on them. But in the past 6 months, I've focused on them a lot because I see them as a part of the ongoing spiritual revolution on this planet. let's say I see those old things not only as a part of, but let's say they are symptoms or health markers of what's going on in our world and what's happening with our planetary ascension. Again, emphasis on we were supposed to be moving out of materialism and the structures, the financial and economy-wide structures that came out of materialism, instead of being dismantled in 2020 in a wonderful, positive way, were upheld. There was a lot of artificial liquidity placed into stock markets and other ways of propping up the economy. These were all artificial. These were not human directed. These actually came from the new kid on the block, the new boss who was placed in charge or placed itself in charge. And that boss, that AI, has pretty much been trying to keep up appearances. And we're now at the point where the economy is so stressed and it is so evidenced on evidentially, that's not a word, based with evidence based on nothing. It is the ultimate, like, there is no foundation, there is nothing there. Now, there wasn't really anything there in the good old days, the bad old days, like before this AI consciousness influence on human neurology and human biology. There was not a lot there to begin with. So, like, I didn't know about what the Federal Reserve was. I didn't know about what the gold standard was. I didn't know about any of those things. Can you just put yourself in my shoes for a moment and be like, what would it be like if you went to a completely different world or another planet or another country and you had to learn about these Byzantine labyrinths of like, what is there? Who are their politicians? What are their ruling houses? All of these, centuries long dramas that are playing out on the world stage and their various different origins. Like, that would be a lot for you to be able to learn about. So yeah, no, and I really don't relate to any of these things, but I had to learn about, like, what was the Federal Reserve and how did that affect humanity and how did that affect the United States, rather, but how did that affect humanity? Where did this come from? So, I do overtly talk about the financial wizards at the top, and they are power abusers, not benevolent overseers of Earth's and humanity's resources and riches. And they largely are plunderers, helping interdimensional, off-world, artificial, non-valid entities to access or, again, plunder and misappropriate the resources of your world. The resources of the beautiful natural world are basically being exploited by those who were in power. But you're witnessing a complete shift away from that. So that's a shift away from the World Economic Forum, the International Monetary Fund. How about also the Great Bank of England? That if you guys have been following information for the past couple of months, the Bank of England has had to relinquish its gold that it holds for various different people, not people, nation states and enormous large entities in your world. And that signifies a loss of power, a loss of spiritual power, a loss of esoteric power is a better way of saying it. The frequency of gold itself holds a power. It is like a powerful crystal. And those in your world who have been materialists over many, many millennia revered gold because they recognize that it gives them a type of esoteric power. And that power is like the power to rule over others and the power to create economies. And the ownership of that gold is now in question. And there's questions about Fort Knox. And I'm sure you've been following all of these different things. And those are all aspects of the former paradigm, which is the carcass of materialism. And materialism basically says, like, gold is valuable because there's a limited amount of it. It's hard to dig out of the ground. And he who has the gold makes the rules. And it's just like saying there's a limited amount of potatoes or there's a limited amount of whatever, banana trees, and that, you want to be able to have all the bananas and sell them all as a resource and make a bunch of money. That is materialism. But when we go into Ascension, what we're really recognizing is we are manifesting bananas, potatoes, and pieces of gold, that they are actually all matter that comes from our mind. And it's a completely different level of relationship with matter. And hopefully, when one achieves this level of spiritual and esoteric empowerment, one has moved beyond the petty fulfillment of, like, appetites and desires. Hopefully, when you get to that level of spiritual attainment, you're about much, much more than just, I joke about, having a golden toilet seat. Like, I want all the gold for me, and I don't care about any of you. And I'm gonna have a golden toilet seat. No, and that's why clearly I've never done that. I need to hydrate here. Thank you for allowing me a moment. That's never been my value system. I have a regular toilet seat. No, but materialistic wealth is not the same as quality of life. It's not the same as quality of community. It's not the same as empowerment. So I also speak about this in all of my classes, how most people equate money with freedom. Money does not equate to freedom. So it wouldn't help you at all if you had all the gold in the world, but you couldn't actually spend it or be free to spend it. Think about someone like, I always think about Lady Diana from, the House of, in Great Britain, the ruling party there, that she was a bird in a gilded cage, had a lot of diamonds and a lot of gems and a lot of gold, but she was not free. She couldn't walk around. She couldn't do what she wanted to do. She couldn't buy and sell and, create wealth for herself with what she had. They were simply ornaments that she had in her repertoire. They were not something that she could actually use in her life. So please think about that. Know that it's not just her. There are very many business owners and very wealthy people who have large amounts of wealth on paper or stored up in some storage, but they are not able to actually be free. It means they can't go where they want to go. They can't do what they want to do with their wealth. They can't just be like, I feel I want to whatever, and all the things that you can do with your wealth. Basically, you're like, you might not have a lot, but you can walk down the street, you can go to a store, buy what you want to buy, you can start a business, you can work with others. That there are many people in this world who have huge amounts of holdings, but the holdings are like holding on to them. They are not actually free to do what they want to do. And these are some of the soul sacrifices that they make to be able to even get into those positions. I will relate this to the curriculum too, but all of this to understand and comprehend, like in real time. If you look on the news today, you will see the economy restructuring itself. This relates to all the tariffs, and this relates to my extremely small business. I don't have a small business. I have like a micro business, a nano business. My business is a very small business. But all of the things that are happening are about moving away from materialism. And they're also now about the revealing of the fakeness of, let's call it the invasionary force from 2020. The invasionary force also came into people's bodies through this type of stuff. And of course, through this type of stuff later. And that invasionary force has been telling people a story that says, nothing has changed. You're still in the same old world that you were in before, even though the truth is you have come out of the world of materialism and you're in a completely new world of pure potential. But because your mentality is being programmed and limited by these other things, it is telling you nothing has changed. And for a little while, it was able to uphold all of the evidences of nothing changing. For example, like there was the pandemic. I'm really hoping my video doesn't get banned. I'm just trying to say these things so carefully. There was the pandemic, and then there was like the return to work. And that was really not supposed to happen. What was supposed to happen was you were supposed to be able to have all the resources that you needed. Well, I didn't even tell you that part. Like you guys got a giant care package, a la the Hunger Games, from cosmic infrastructure, light, and the world of benevolent coherent light family as a planet to be able to help you through Ascension in 2019, 2020. And I told you about that. The prison wardens stealing your care package and saying, no, you citizens, you actual alive, embodied biological humans, you shall not receive these riches and these resources. Instead, the governments are going to receive them. They're like the prison warden, and they're going to take it and they're going to eat all of your cookies and give you little tiny crumbs. And that is what happened in 2020. They gave out in the United States like unemployment protections and small business loans and other things like that, that barely kept people afloat. Many people did not stay afloat. Some people unalived themselves and self-destructed because their businesses went out of business. There was also massive fraud and abuse that's now being evidenced from the DOGE, I want to say society, situation, organization, that is revealing a lot of the fraud and waste and abuse of the past 5 years. But yeah, no, a lot of these people didn't qualify for these loans, and these loans became grants. And I'm not kidding, but there was like a loan for like whatever, $9,000 for sex toys. I am not even exaggerating. Sorry if you're watching as a family. Um, I have to kind of get back to where I was. The energy was supposed to flow to you in Ascension so that way you didn't have to be worrying about where you would find your squares of toilet paper and how you would buy your physical food at the store until you transitioned to a light body where you didn't have to be buying things at the store and eating regular food, and you're being sustained by the sun and by the light of pure consciousness. That was what we were really supposed to be experiencing. And when I relate this to you, it's sad because I'm telling you a lot was stolen from you, but you need to know how much was taken from you so that way you know how much you are actually owed in this. There is now a huge rectification event that is happening that is a ton of light coming into this world. It's a light of intelligence, divine intelligence, and a light of justice and rectification. And what it's doing first is definitely illuminating all of the dark, gross, corrupt areas that profoundly need to be changed and restructured. I'm not an Elon Musk supporter or celebrant in any way, but I do recognize the good work that is being done or evidenced in the narrative story of the DOGE that says, hey, look over here. There's a lot of waste and abuse, and here's the outright evidence of it. Everything that if you are an intuitive person like me, you could put your mind's tendril of attention onto these situations and just feel that they're corrupt and know it on a deep inside level. Now what you're getting are the rational affirmations from external sources and the information in the five senses reality consensual world that you can bring to other people. Like if it is my intuition, if I say it to some people, they would say, poo-poo, it's just your intuition. Although some of you are wonderfully acknowledging of my intuition. And you're like, no, Aurora, I believe in your intuition. And, you know, I believe these are not my rational knowings. I don't read these things in a library. I simply know them on a deep inner level. So thank you for those of you who validate my deep inner knowings, even beyond what is available in the realm of mass media, because one of the things that's also been shown to you is how manipulated and corrupt your mass media is. So yeah, you're not getting all the information that you should be getting. And also a lot of the information that I have that is not in the mass media is highly accurate. But now you have a type of whatever cognitive ammunition to use in all sorts of arguments with people, because you can say, here's the evidence in the five senses realm. Here are the articles where I can substantiate my voice and say that this is really going on. So that way, you know, it's not just my private fantasy or imaginings of what I think is happening. But the energy that came into your planet 5 years ago was largely frittered away, wasted, and diluted. And instead of everybody being able to get out of the materialistic mind, people stayed in the materialistic mind more than ever and had to find ways to survive at a very, very low quality of life. Many people had to move, many people had to downsize. There was tons of economic instability. And also there was the continuation of like the lies of the former paradigm. And some of those lies are about the empowerment of nation states. That is what's going to happen in this year. And what's happening right now is a flow of power energy away from nation states. Like governments are a collective hallucination, and they're upheld by your belief and the respect of your energy. When you do not believe in them or respect them with your energy, then you do not condone their existence, or you have no contract with them, or you revoke your consent from them, and then they have no empowerment. And that is largely for the satanic structures that are here on your planet. So please know, like, if you're wondering, throughout this conversation, if you're like, but I'm just one small person, what can I do? Be like, you can withdraw your consent and unbelieve in a lot of these flimsy power structures that never really had power. But the United States had power, and I'm no longer even calling it the USA. Now I call it the SUSA because it's the satanic USA. And the satanic USA is even like, I would say, what happened pretty much, I guess, after the Kennedy assassination, but also after 9/11. 9/11 was really the most obvious power shift to me in the United States. And that happened literally just a month or so before I walked into this body and came into this world. And so that's pretty much the post 9/11 world is the world that I am familiar with. And those have been the shadow government working behind the scenes as power, I want to say power abusers and power brokers, as the unseen integument of events, not only in the United States, but across the world. This is why I bring this up. This really is the entire world. And I know that we have a wonderfully international student group here. And so I talk about USA or SUSA because I'm more familiar with it, but I'm sure each one of you is more familiar with what's happening in your own homeland. And that's important because we are, like around the whole entire world. It's not what is happening only in one country, but you can also sense like United States is kind of like the beacon of satanic crapola, radiating out a very strong signal of crappiness and harm to the rest of the world. But there's lots of, satanic crapola in many other places too, like European Union. Sorry, I'm just getting more water here. European Union has lots of satanic crapola, and that's where a lot of the International Monetary Fund, evil wizards at the top are over there. Okay, hold on a minute. But this isn't boring, and we'll get to more important, like more elevated spiritual stuff. But I'm going to put this down safely. You did not get assimilated in 5 years ago. So you were supposed to ascend. You got super cheated. Oh, wait, I have to do one more thing. Hold on. Let me just turn on my AC. It's getting really warm in here. Hold on. So on the one hand, you were supposed to ascend, but you didn't ascend. The plan by the evil ones was for you not only to not ascend, but to be completely assimilated, like lost to perdition in the roach trap. Roaches check in, but they don't check out, like not able to ever be rescued, kind of uploaded or on the segue, on the off ramp to upload your consciousness into a type of satanic digital nightmare life extension world, like some Black Mirror episode of, that TV show, Black Mirror episode gone horribly awry or gone horribly correct according to their way. That didn't happen either. Both of the two extremes didn't happen. And we kind of like chugged along, just keeping going, just keeping going. Sometimes just staying alive is positive and good. So please celebrate the fact that we were just able to stay alive and remain unassimilated. But I bring this up because right now, at this moment, there is an enormous tsunami of light and cosmic justice that is flooding through this planet and this world. And it is a rectification event that is restoring us to our original ascension timeline. And everything that we lost is being returned to us. And so what does this look like? The old power structures are crumbling and dismantling because the light is corrosive to them, because those old power structures are literally made out of false light. They don't have integument. And today I'll talk in our curriculum about like the Egyptian book of coming forth into day, which is formerly known as the Egyptian Book of the Dead, where the ancient Egyptians, even before the pharaohs, talked about building of your afterlife raft, which is called a bark, B-A-R-Q-U-E, because in Egypt, they used to have like a flat raft, and it had kind of like a curly prow, and they would kind of, raft their way along the river. And you had to build a raft like that out of your belief system, out of all of the structures that make polygons inside of you, of what you believe in. Your mind and your emotions are directly related to your DNA behavior and the structures of your DNA inside of you, and your cellular structure, and the structure of your water, and your neurological structure, like very evidenced in 5 senses reality structures, plus also your esoteric architecture and this type of structure. And the ancient Egyptians recognized that you had to be structured in the right way in order to have a successful afterlife. And if you didn't have your structure built correctly, if you didn't build your raft effectively, then as soon as you set out into the sea of consciousness, there are waves there. There are leviathans there. There's all these things that can destabilize your little raft and make it break apart. You don't make it to the other side because your raft gets broken apart. That is what is going on with the world's economy right now. It is a raft that is built out of lies and false light. Literally, the lies and false light are the mania of debt, the mania of exponential debt. Yeah, I hope that I'm saying that word correctly. Someone corrected me before. It was very helpful. And please forgive me in advance if my brain doesn't always come up with the right vocabulary word. But the way that imagined money is used in the world. So the gold standard, when people talk about that, and the ancient way of using gold is pretty much like saying, here's a piece of gold, like here's a rock, and it's worth this much. And I give you this, and you give me this. It's just like saying, here's a potato, here's a banana, here's a thing, and you give me this. But when they started to be able to create ways of getting more than we actually had, this is the invention of buying and lending and debt, and the type of exponential debt. Would you like to have math class, everyone? You're like, Aurora, first you're making us do finance and world politics and civics. Now you're making us do math. Like, we don't like this. I'm like, well, wait, let me teach you about the origins of the number zero. This is fascinating, good stuff. So zero is a magical number. It is the empty set. It is a set of things that doesn't exist. So when people invented simple counting in the world to be able to count stuff like potatoes and bananas and lumps of gold, they never invented zero because you don't count the stuff that doesn't exist. That's all the stuff that you don't see. It's nothingness, right? So way back in very ancient, very highly civilized India, they invented zero because they needed to do calculations that were so high. They needed to be able to calculate the number of flower petals that were required for a particular marriage celebration. They were an incredibly civilized realm of this world that I think of it fondly. I'm like, oh, yes, not like this barbarian time. No, back then, their most large problem was how many flowers do we need to grow so that we can sprinkle flower petals effectively enough on all of the wedding guests and dance participants. They had to calculate a large number of flower petals. This is the first time that the number zero was evidenced to be used in these forms of calculations, and it's actually like written on a wall in India that survives as an archaeological find from ancient time. Okay, but that was like a very long time ago, possibly more than millennia, possibly even like tens or hundreds of thousands of years ago, depending upon who is the archaeologist dating this particular civilization. But fast forward to the Dark Ages in Europe, just a couple of like maybe 1,000 years ago from this time now, when people in Europe who were very largely superstitious and not very well educated, this is going to get around to your life right now. Just keep going with me, all right? They did banking, but they did banking like, I give you $5, you give me $5 back. They didn't yet know how they were doing math with an abacus. All right. They didn't know how to calculate how much you would receive back. Like calculations are a form of muscle power. How much am I going to get back? Like if you're not right now, like if you go to buy a car or you want to get a loan, you're going to be like, okay, you're going to get this money, but you got to pay back extra. And they are calculating how much extra you got to pay back in order to have that loan. In the medieval time and Dark Ages time, there was some level of banking, but they hadn't yet figured out how to do buying and lending in a way that really benefited the banks. Mostly it was pretty fair. Like I give you this and you give me this back. But once they learned about the number zero, and this came not only from ancient India, it actually came by way of the Middle East, which is when the guy named Fibonacci visited the Middle East. And he found out that they had all sorts of cool things there that were called Arabic numerals. They had an abacus in Fibonacci's day, and they also had Roman numerals, none of which are very good for the type of things that Fibonacci was interested in. But when he learned about Arabic numerals, he was like, this is cool, and I can do all sorts of cool, fun mathematical acrobatics with it. And then he found this number called zero. He's like, this number is even more awesome because it allows me to do high-level calculations that I couldn't do otherwise. And Europe found out about the number zero. And then the guys who buy and sell and lend and create artificial money in the banks in Europe decided that they really liked the number 02 because it allowed them to create this type of exponential debt. And that's where it's like if I loan you $5 and then I'm going to charge you exponential debt every day, compound interest, that's what it's called. Every day I charge you debt. Every day. So I'm not just charging you 3% on $5 that I initially loaned you. I charge you 3% on the first day, and I add a little extra chunk, and then 3% on the second day, another little extra chunk, 3% on the third day, another chunk. At a certain point, like after a certain number of weeks, the chunk has grown to like $5 million in debt. And then there's no way that you're ever going to pay me back. And then that means that you end up being beholden to me and kind of like enslaved. And that is literally the story of money enslavement in the world. And that type of mania, enslavement, and exploitation has been used to diminish human consciousness and diminish human freedom very, very devastatingly, especially in the past 200 or 300 years. It has also been used to prop up governments. So it's enslaving humans on an individual level, and also it has basically enslaved the entire continent of Africa, not in the sense of an African diaspora where they are physically enslaved with chains and then they have to go work elsewhere, but in the way that their national finances or national treasuries are beholden to different European investors, that it keeps them constantly enslaved and never able to dig their way out of debt. Or you can consider, possibly people that you know in your life, personal debt, which would be a credit card or something like that. It's like once you get into the hole, you're never going to dig your way out of the hole. And some people feel so desperate and despondent about that they feel like even why try? Their whole life force of their body goes down because they feel it is hopeless to even try to continue to be alive here because they have no potential for being able to achieve the resources that they need to be alive on a personal level, on the level of an entire nation or continent. This is devastating. This is a loss of life force energy in the world. It's basically decrepitude and death. Everything that makes you go slanty into the membrane of death. That's how money has been used. That's not good grammar. Money doesn't necessarily have to be used in this way, but all the things that I'm talking about are the dysfunctions of how money is being used, how it is being used in a pathological way in your world. And so then all of the stuff that you were doing as humans up until 2019, 2020, this stuff kind of said, oh, good. Now that I'm getting inside of your bodies, taking over your social edifices and running your consciousnesses and running your lives and running your world, I'll just be continuing on with all those very bad things that have been happening. That's pretty much what happened. The same echoes of the dead carcass. Your world died actually in 2020. It's a dead carcass. And the carcass has been full of worms for the past 5 years. And those worms have been simply feeding in the former patterns that worked. So that's all of the things that nation states do, like creating money out of nothing, printing loans, bonds, treasuries, propping up the stock market, all of these things are now being revealed how fake that system is and how hallucinatory it is. It was always fake and hallucinatory. But what is helping you on your ascension journey is now that it is highlighted exactly how flimsy it is, exactly how insubstantial, that's a good word, it is, and also how much you do not want to participate and give your life force energy to that erroneous and dead structure. That's why I tell people, come out of the carcass. Don't put because your life force energy, it's not only your work and your work hours and how much you produce as a worker bee in the economy of the world, but it's also your belief that people believe in the stock market, or they believe in imaginary numbers, or they believe in getting a credit card, or they believe in home loans, or they believe in car loans, or they believe in small business loans, or any of these things that are actually these hallucinations that are all, I would just say, a bunch of unhealthy hallucinations. So, okay, I'm feeling time like I need to start to focus more on the curriculum. But so please know that what you see going on in terms of giant world structuring is not the end result of, like, Trump has a bombastic personality. Like, that's the muggle news. That's the very surface level veneer, just touching on the surface and feeling like a blind person feels braille, just feeling the very rough outline of what is happening. You must look beyond the surface level veneer and actually comprehend what's happening in terms of light. Light is abstraction, like an abstract consciousness that is coming into the world, and it is illuminating and highlighting these pathogenic structures so that they can be dismantled, because you want that fire hose of light and information to come through, and you want it to break everything that it can possibly break, because it's a stress test. And if it can be broken in that way, it should be broken. Now, when I say that, the dark side is listening, and the dark side is like, oh, Aurora wants us to stress test the fabric of the cosmos and also your light bodies and see how much you guys can withhold. And I'm like, no, I actually am not. I do not consent to that. But it's necessary for every positive, well-structured system to have a stress test, but not a stress test that risks the foundation of existence or imperils all life everywhere. That is not an effective stress test. All right. And guess what? You've already passed it. It's been the past 5 years. It's been an incredible stress test, but also everything has its limit. So, it's like talking about your diamond body and your light body and your uncorruptible essence. It is uncorruptible. But if you are exposed to this constant level of corrosion, which is what a lot of this frequency force field imprisonment in this world is right now, like, there's a certain point where it will have an impact. So, like, your DNA, your morphogenic field, your soul, these frequency based aspects of yourself, that's your light body. And what if you get just irradiated with a blast furnace of evil, wrong, pathogenic, harmful, false light? There's only a certain amount of that you can withstand. Like being dumped sewage or garbage on top of you for 5 years straight. There's only so much that you can withstand. And I think that you, collective and individuals, have done an amazing job at maintaining yourselves and being as intact as you possibly can be in the face of all of that. So your light body is a force field around you. It's also different anatomical structures within you. And being exposed to the force of this corrosive energy field that's been bathing everyone here, it is a mutilation. It does corrode and eat away at, instead of your light body being like whatever, 10 feet or 12 feet big, maybe it's only a couple of inches. Instead of having all of these biophotons going all the way through your body, maybe you just have a little bit, or maybe there's areas where it's not really going. Like, it's a lot less than it should be. And it's a phenomenon. Your light body and your consciousness is a phenomenon. And that means that you can't just expect it to be something like that you take for granted. And same thing with the rising and the setting of the sun. Like, people say, as sure as the sun shall rise, this will happen. You can't take that for granted. I can tell my voice is very tired today already. You have to recognize, just drink a bunch of water. Sun is a consciousness phenomenon. We're going to talk about ancient Egypt. You got to treat it like something that's super valuable. Can't just be like, oh, sun, shmun, another day. Oh, well, back to the grindstone. This is not an ongoing miracle. You have to be like, no, life is an ongoing miracle. And the phenomenon of this giant ball of consciousness, as it rises each day and as we receive energy from it, is a miracle. And same thing with your light body. Light body, light body. It's a phenomenon. And it is such a disservice or disrespect to be like, it's incorruptible. Don't worry, we can irradiate you as much as we want. Like, that's not fair. That's not fair. And that is not how we can treat this phenomenon, this experience, the supernatural force field. And treating it in that way, hold on a minute. Yeah, it is kind of like taking you as this amazing generative genius that can do so much and make so much happen, like the goose that can lay a golden egg. and just turning it into just a regular goose. Like you emit realities. Your light body is not like just a cool, pretty color or something like that. It is your anatomy that you use to navigate and create time. And that means that you can do so much with it. It is a huge tool of empowerment. And so it's not just like smashing a Fabergé egg or getting rid of something that is beautiful. The corrosion against your light body is also a disempowerment, and it is an imperilment of all the things that you could do with it. Like not just smashing a piano, but imperiling all the beautiful music that that piano can play. And the stress test of the cosmic infrastructure would never include that level of peril. You got it? Please know this. Know this about God. God is like a super benevolent, super genius, and would never be like, I think I'll risk the entire fabric of space-time by stress testing it and sprinkle this, sprinkle this bad technology and these other harmful things all throughout, and then like see who wins. God would never do that because that's really risking incredibly valuable, important stuff, including you, me, planetary ascension, and all the things that we can build in the future. So you've already passed the stress test, but you should never have undergone this level of stress test. Let me go to questions and comments, and let me dive into the curriculum, and we'll return to these to this sense of what I'm talking about later. Thank you very much. Susie gives a greeting and says, good job, Aurora. We need reset. Totally. And the word reset, I think, is a good one. It's the one that's been used to describe the plans of like the World Economic Forum and these larger former, I call them fat asses. Apologies to anybody that actually does have a fat ass. I don't hate you at all. I just use that as a word for like people who are rich fat asses. You know what I mean? Like they've got 12 mansions and they drive a Rolls Royce. That type of person. All right. No, I love people of all sizes. But the World Economic Forum, rich fat ass people, they've been thinking that they're going to do another reset, that they're used to this, like, oh, like, we don't like this game. Just knock down all the toys, knock down all the Jenga towers, and then it's our toy, so we'll pick it up, and then we'll make a new thing, and you'll all have to play along with us. And that's their snotty little attitude. And I'm like, no, actually, this is going to be really different, where you're not going to just have a reset back into the same old trauma positions as before, and then restart everybody from their degradation to move forward and, limp forward again. No, this is actually going to be a divine reset where cosmic justice prevails and energy and resources flow to excellence. That is what is actually happening here. And Suzuka says, that's so good to hear. I'd rather be a light eater. Absolutely. So I'll speak to that because I have, multiple different teachings on that. Our eventual heritage reclamation is being light eaters. And that's who and what we are. And when you eat light, of course, you do not participate in a materialistic economy, and everything about you changes, because all you need to know is that once they or the powers that were, various different power abusers throughout human history, changed the human genetics so that you had to have food every day. Everything came to be about the hunt for food and the drive for survival. When you can eat light and you have the sun, the consciousness ball in the sky right there, and that's what you eat every day, your whole entire motivation changes. Because you're not like, oh my God, I got to pay the rent. I got to buy the food. I got to get out there and make a dollar so that way I can support my family. Totally, totally different. Your motivation becomes life as art, where you're really trying to handcraft each moment of exquisite beauty so that you are doing exactly the right thing and saying the right thing and moving in the right direction in order to stay alive, in order to create beauty, in order to express divine truth, and in order to serve the world that you live within, to increase the beauty of the world. And those standards and ideals that I just mentioned are largely absent in what people do when they're in near survival mode. People are like working at any old job, even if it doesn't suit them, because they feel that it is important for them just to buy daily bread and not to try to exquisitely handcraft each moment. And can you imagine someone who would ever works at a fast food restaurant and they're like just trying to survive, but then they're also trying to honor their soul, where they're like, no, I will dip each French fry as an art form into the hot oil and make sure that it's, comes out the perfect golden brown. Like, cannot do that. You cannot do that. You're painting in broad strokes and have to simply commodify your time and work in generalities. And you cannot make each French fry exquisitely handcrafted for the people that will then, come along and eat it at the restaurant, cannot take that level of care and personal investment in the things that you do. It's death of soul. And what we're trying to do right now, I keep telling you, come out of the carcass, be alive. To what it is to be alive is when your soul is alive and you're like, I'm not just motivated by money. I'm not just motivated by stupid government or other control structures or even innate genetic enslavement structures. I am motivated by my soul and my divine connection. And this is literally what personal self-responsibility is. This is the change of the ages as you come out of the age of Pisces and you enter into, sing that song, guys, Age of Aquarius. I have to change my Zoom settings so you can really hear, but you'll hear my air conditioner. Aquarius, Aquarius. Age of Aquarius means the age of self-responsibility. It actually does not mean the age of running around naked like a hippie in the movie Hair, which is what that comes from. But it could equate to positive, non-sexualized nudity in the sun and absorbing sunlight, but not hedonism, not the hedonistic lifestyle of the hippies in that movie. Age of Aquarius is the age of personal responsibility, where you decide that you are going to listen to your own inner divine compass that tells you what you need to do, and not to listen to a king of a nation state or a pope of a religion or even a professor trained in a university or even whatever, a small community leader or your boss or someone like that. You choose what you are going to do and you choose what is right for you in each moment. And that is also a return to your true feral nature. Nobody tells a wild animal what to do. Wild animals are free and feral. They eat what they want and they poop where they want, and you will not control them. Like, look at birds who fly around your neighborhood. Like, they're going to eat what they want, and then they will poop on your car, and then they will fly away laughing because they got your car. Like, that's what they do. Be as feral in that way, but please do not literally poop anywhere. But be as feral as you can in that way, in terms of joyfully following your own inner guidance and not having control structures define what you are and are not allowed to do. And I don't want to ever sound like a broken record or anything like that, or definitely not a salesperson. But what fascinates me about Bitcoin, why I like it as a integument to a moneyless time, is that it's feral, like it's permissionless. It's something that you don't need to have a government's permission to do. In fact, governments many, many times tried to stop individual people from doing this naughty Bitcoin stuff. And that's because they can't control it. The reason why governments don't like it is because you can't control it. There's not one guy in charge of it. There's not one person, twisting the knobs and turning the settings of the Bitcoin economy in order to make things happen. It is a very, very complex ecosystem that is made out of many, many, many individual people. And that is why it is such a strong system, because it's not just one government that's controlling it. So I also recognize that people, as I talk about AI and anti-transhumanism, they might say, is there a conflict? What about Bitcoin? Bitcoin actually predates any of your AI systems that are made out of like human created crap, not ancient AI and galactic scale AI, which of course is much older than stuff that you've created here in your world. But AI, like as it's being used, for example, OpenAI, Claude, Grok, these brand name, retail available to the end user AI programs. Like AI has been running the stock market in the United States and elsewhere for a very long amount of time. That is not available to you as a regular retail investor. But now there are things that are available to you as just like a regular individual buying at the retail level. That AI is not required for and does not run the Bitcoin system. And the Bitcoin system also runs off of chips and hardware that is not does not require the sophisticated complexity of AI or anything like that. You can pretty much participate and build these things yourself with what are now relatively inexpensive components that are available, whatever cheaply online, and you can build, and the schematics are all available online. It is in every way. If you're gonna use money or something like that, in every way, it fills all of the requirements of being something that can't be controlled by like a small group of evil people or one evil government. It's your life raft. It's not the end of your journey, but it is the bridge or integument to be able to get to a better place and a better mind state. So you are in ascension. That means that you are manifesting your reality. But most people are still so stuck in materialism and survivalism that they can't imagine what is a world where energy flows to excellence. And so you're going to have this little interim, not that you're gonna, but it appears as if it is required, even though I'm always aiming for instantaneous, like, all God now. Like, we didn't have to even do any of these other things, and we're all in immediate bliss and immediate ascension now. But maybe there are lessons to be learned along the way, just like becoming a light eater. Let me also, I massively need to hydrate. It's very warm out today. So I might also have to wait and get some more water here. And I'm just collecting my thoughts for a moment. Sorry, because I had something that I was focusing on, and then you can tell when when they try to mind wipe, it's because that's important stuff that you want to be able to continue staying focused on. Important things. Okay. Light eater. Becoming a light eater does not mean that you're like, oh, I'm really hungry. Wish I could have like a giant hamburger and chocolate milkshake. But I'm going to be a light eater in a sense, so no hamburger and milkshake for me. No. Ascension is when you're like, wow, I have eaten all of the hamburgers and all of the milkshakes, and I am so satiated on that level, and now I'm ready for a different level of spiritual experience. Okay, it is not self-deprivation, and it is not merely asceticism or a rejection or renunciation of resources. Being a light eater is when you are so really thirsty and hungry for light that all of the hamburgers and milkshakes are really not enough, and you require faster, more abundant light immediately. And that's why you have to grow and change. Just like when you're a tiny baby in your mother's womb, you get a certain amount of nutrition from the placenta, but at a certain point, you're too big. And your body is like, I'm hungry. I want to get out of here and eat some hamburgers and milkshakes because I'm not getting enough in here through the placenta. Call the waitress, like, I'm hungry. And you get born. And then your mom's like, here's some breast milk. Start with this. But this is what we're doing with our light body. Your light body is literally on our planet. We're literally ready to get born because we need more light. And we're not getting enough light out of the world of materialism. Materialism, root word, matter, similar to mother, being in the womb of materialism where you gestate and you learn and you grow. But at a certain point, you're hungry. And you need to break out of the womb of materialism and get born into the world of pure light. So you don't have to renounce and not eat and not do the things that you actually want to do. You actually need to do them. I want you to eat all the hamburgers, and I want you to drink gallons of milkshakes, because that is like being at the level when you're a caterpillar before you're a butterfly. Caterpillars are getting all of the protein needs of butterflies because butterflies don't eat protein. So when caterpillars are coming in and eating your garden, and I have a garden, and I do not celebrate those little white butterflies at all. No, I don't like them at all. They're called cabbage white because they eat cabbage and basically anything that is a positive green food that you eat, they eat it too. So mostly it's my cannabis plant. So they want to get in and they want to eat my cannabis plants. And I'm like, get out of here, butterflies. That's my garden. That's not for you. But the caterpillars, when they're loading up on eating my leaves of my garden, are getting all of the protein that they can get for the time after they metamorphose and they become butterflies, because butterflies drink nothing but nectar. And that's like being a light eater. They're literally just drinking flower essences. They don't have protein, but they need to feed their eggs and give birth to their eggs to create the next level of reality. So all of that stuff that they ate when they were a caterpillar comes into play. You are doing the same thing now with your light body. You need to eat hamburgers and milkshakes because that's what you do as a caterpillar. But then at a certain point, you have sustained yourself and you have enough of that solidity to then be able to move into levels of pure light being and pure ephemera. So don't starve yourself now. Eat it and enjoy it, and especially repertoires of pastries, but not every day. Oh, and this is interesting. Pedro says, I was told the Maya invented the zero. That is very possible. And I'd have to look into historical records of how far back the use of zero for the Maya compared to how far back the use of zero is to the Hindu empire that is said to be the originator. Because these empires did talk to one another. They actually were not separated as it is falsely portrayed by European colonialistic, ethnocentric history and sharings, that it is presumptive that these empires were discrete, but they had a lot of intercommunication and sharing of both resources and ideas. So that's not only across time, but that is also across distances. Like they had different forms of papyrus canoes and things that they were able to use to be able to get from continent to other continents. So I'm not sure where it originated. If it originated in the Hindu Empire, it might have come to South and Mesoamerica at some time and influenced them. So how do we know? We'll have to learn more and we'll have to see. But thank you for coming to my financial civics class and then also learning about the origins of the number zero. Okay, Suzica also says, I tried to unalive myself in 2020. Suzica, oh my goodness, I'm happy you're still here. It felt like it was being stuffed backward into a coat that was 10 times too small for me. It was unbearable and I couldn't take it. In the end, I have made it in the end, she says, in the end, I have made it, but it's been the hardest challenge of my life. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. It takes a lot to be that authentic and vulnerable. And I'm personally very happy that you're still here and that you made it through that. And it sounds like an incredible soul torment. And I recognize and validate, like, it takes an enormous amount of strength to be able to face the destruction that we faced in 2020. That was basically, here you are on a beautiful ascension timeline, and you're like, I'm gonna ascend, I'm gonna ascend, I'm gonna ascend. And then right at the last moment, no ascension for you. Gets whisked out from underneath your feet. And the desperation and devastation, I think many people can relate to that. It's recognized how strongly it influenced you, how it made you feel. Glad that you managed to stay alive and stay here. And I hope that others who are watching this video and hearing about this, hope that you're able to relate in your own sense. People had many different endings in 2020. Like some people had the end of businesses or employment opportunities. Some people had the end of other relationships. And there was very much an end to a time of purity and innocence in terms of mental and spiritual connection. Not to turn it all around to me, but from my viewpoint, that was what it felt like when they started with the different force fields here and the exacerbation of this stuff through this. What that felt like to me was I couldn't just hear people's regular telepathy and feel their heart frequency. All of a sudden, I felt all of this amplified synthetic telepathy with no heart and loud voices in the mind. And also a lot of these amplified voices and interconnectivities were malevolent. And I talk a lot about that. I have a whole video series actually that I've shared with people about the way that there are a caste system. It wasn't just equally affecting or afflicting everyone. It was really the culmination, the cherry on top of the sundae of crap in 2020 was the culmination of this caste system where there were some early adopters and technocrats who opened their minds to this type of transhumanism. And then there were many of those of us who fought against it. And when the power dynamic shifted, the ones who were early adopters, they were like, oh, we will now really F you over, because they had amplified minds and they were in alignment with the regime of the AI. And those amplified malevolent minds, they made our past 5 years really a torturous living nightmare. Yeah. And so what we're looking at is not only the echoes of a dead society that have been upheld by some kind of transhumanist death cult, but we are really looking at an assault on Christ and an assault on your natural connection to the world of pure light and genuine cognitive illumination and comprehending and seeing the world clearly. So trying to bring it to a good resolution because I want to jump into like more of the curriculum of class. It's a miracle that we survived this stress test of the fabric of reality in 2020. And it's a miracle that we've been held together for so long. I will take credit. I do contribute on a regular basis to the ongoing miracle. Many others do as well. And I want you to know, not only are we not going down into some kind of like fallen world, but we are actually ascending in spite of all of this, because it is kind of like some kind of a math test where you say, what happens when the inevitable force of inevitability meets the immovable object? What happens? Who wins? Will this thing power through this and move the inevitable object or immovable object? Or will this thing stay put and this thing can't go forward and it's gonna keep on hitting against this? The answer is, this is your ascension, the force of inevitability of your consciousness moving forward. And this seemingly immovable object, which is this transhumanist agenda, it totally goes out of the way and your consciousness goes exactly where it needs to go. I'll answer more of your questions and comments. Don't worry, because I know that you have a lot to share, everyone. But let me go more into curriculum from 10 years ago. This is all about the death journey. And what we're really talking about, let's go into death as an abstraction. Death is a focuser of consciousness. This, I know, rather broken sculpture that I need to fix, but I have a lot going on, coordinating the world economy right now. This is a refinery of your consciousness. And in sharing over the past semester, you've gotten a very, very clear idea of how you have multiple different timelines and multiple different positions of consciousness in this position, in this force field here, representing different narrative structures of your life. And being in certain positions brings you to the membrane of death, but being really only in this one position here brings you back to your origins of consciousness, which is also your destination, which is where you return and rejoin with yourself as God, pretty much. But how about all of these other areas here? When you, what actually happens when you die? What actually happens, and what happens to your consciousness? And other questions such as, are the membranes of death lined with all of the dead fruits and vegetables and animals that you've ever eaten? Do they all stand there on the membrane of death, watching you and judging you while you eat more stuff in life? And are the dead carrots like, not another carrot? Like, I'm preparing for class and thinking like, how am I going to talk to these guys about this? Because the answer is no. No, all the food that you've eaten does not stand on the sidelines of life, in the moment of its death, looking at you, judging you, and being like, no, don't eat me, stop eating. No, not at all. Because membrane of death is supposed to be a clearinghouse for consciousness, not a warehouse of consciousness. That when the energy is flowing through this shape effectively, it emerges from the center and it flows like this way down this waterfall. And then it goes up, around, and back in over here, right? And same thing over here, down this waterfall, up over here. Figure eight, figure eight. And of course, it's doing the same thing. What I just showed was that for this lower quadrant down here, but you have this one. This is the mirror opposite up here, timeline up here. Here we go. Figure eight, down this way, and then around this way. And look, here we're going uphill. Uphill, 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 uphill. And then here you go. This is downhill on that sense. And then here you go, uphill, uphill, uphill. So what you just learned from that is this area here, the membrane of death, in your life, in your, context over here, is a two-way street. There are two levels of energy that are flowing in this membrane, one of which is towards the source, which is also the destination, and one of which is away from the destination. And these are supposed to be consciousness highways with no one wrecked on the road. And if these highways are clear, then as soon as an unsuccessful consciousness explorer gets to the membrane of death, they're like, uh-oh, I'm on the wrong highway, I'm the wrong spot, and they go right on back to the source, so that way they can try it again. But of course, you don't come out here, because I did all of this wrong. So now let's draw it for you. I mean, I didn't do it wrong, but I did it in a confusing way. Let's draw it for you. First, I'm going to just draw simple. I hope it'll work. Let me draw a circle. I know it's green, not yellow, because yellow doesn't really show up on your screen that well. So here's cross section of the torus, just like what you see in my sculpture, right? And here's birth. And let's say over here, this is the membrane of death. We're going to make it like super exaggerated so that it's super duper fat. But I want you to see that there's two directions that the energy goes. It goes both in the, here's the source, get a better color. Here's the source, which is purple, right over here. All right, so energy consciousness emerges from the source. And this is the beginning. Like, here's year 0, and here's your first life, attempt at life. You assemble over here, and as you're moving upward, then you find that you're not in the correct alignment. So you circulate back around and then come back to here. And then circulate back around and then come back to here. These are all attempts at life. Here you lived for a week, then you died, then you circulate back around. It's making a weird box, but don't worry. And then you come back to here. And then you live for a couple of months, and then you circulate back around and then come back to here. Okay, by the time you get over to here, like here you've lived 50 years, but you did the wrong thing and you ended up on the membrane of death. So you get on the highway. The highway takes you over to here, but you've already done this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. And what you do is you move all the way over to this lane on the highway because this is the one you haven't explored. So what you're exploring are various different iterations. You must mute yourself. Good job. Iterations of time with greater and greater levels of focus. I'm just hydrating here. Learning who you are and who you're not. Where I'm scribbling in red, these are all versions of time that do not actually represent you. This is who you're not. This is not who you are. This is who you're not. And now let's make one line that represents who you are. Make it a fat line. This is who you genuinely are. This one version of reality. That is the real you. And all of the other stuff is either filler or a misadventure or untruthful or, I just already said, not the real you. It's not your eternal presence. Some of these timelines to the left and right might have something of interest for you to explore, but mostly it's not valuable. And mostly you can avoid those timelines and have a wonderful educational experience as a soul without having to go directly down all of those wrong highways. You might get information, which is timeline bleed through, from these erroneous lives towards your truthful life. And sometimes you can feel it as like dodged a bullet. Like sometimes you recognize that you made a right decision, which is what placed you on your central core timeline over here. Like maybe you chose either not to get on a plane and then found out later that the plane crashed. You're like, oh, good, I made the right choice. Or maybe you chose not to get into a relationship or not to get a job. And then you find out later, like, oh, that would have like destroyed me. That either that relationship would have killed me or that job would have killed me or it would have been the worst choice, whatever for me. And then you realize you dodged a bullet. And I've told you some stories that people have told to me through my class sharings over the years of like choosing not to get into some guy's car when they're hitchhiking because they were like, I think I would be dead in a dumpster if I did that. That's correct. And you would be. And also think about this. There's also things like pharmaceutical misadventures, like choosing not to take that pill, choosing not to drink that drink, choosing not to do that thing at that party or festival or concert or whatever. And then it ends up meaning like you stay alive. You stay alive. I want to say you live to die another day, but you stay alive in order to have a continued life experience. Okay. Now let's talk about what death is on an abstract level. Now I have to draw another person's life. And let's get a good color. Thank you. Drawing awesome things over here. So now I'm going to draw. That's not right. Here, let's make it like a red one so that you can really see it's different. Okay, so here's a completely different person's life. That overlaps. No, I can't do that. I have to do better. Do it like this. That was the worst. Ah, I'll get there, guys. I'll get it. Good. Okay. So we've got person green and then we've got person red. And person green and person red overlap in this area where I am drawing in blue. This area right here, this is where person red and person green, their lives and their timelines overlap. So let's draw some colors here. Let's make these smaller lines. Draw some timelines is what I'm trying to say. So here's some red guy timelines. And here's this, pay attention to this timeline over here. That's an important one. And then let's draw some blue, green. I'm sorry, I can't even talk today. Here's some green timelines. This is going to be an important timeline over here, this green one. So pay attention to that. And then here are these timelines interspersed. All right. The areas where the timelines between green and blue, sorry, I'm saying the wrong words and your brain gets so confused, between green and red. Here, let's just highlight it. These areas over here are where your lives overlap. These are where two people's lives overlap. That means that you live in the same time, the same place, on the same planet. You can actually talk to each other and interact with each other. And this can be two humans, or a person and a carrot, and you're about to eat the carrot, or a human and a dog, whatever. A dog, use me and my cat as an example. Years ago, I had a cat before I had Cheeky. All right. So this is the area where me and my cat overlap. Right? But what happened? My cat is not alive anymore. She died. She got bit by another animal and she died. This is a true life story. So on my version of reality, if I'm person green, I don't interact with my cat who is the red shape anymore because she is over here on this timeline over here. And because I am over here on this timeline over here, we are no longer in areas of coincidence in the time field. What has happened is in this area, we live together and we overlapped. But for both of us, as our consciousness was refined to go closer and closer and closer to the central core timeline, which is who you really are, we focused away from each other. We both focused towards our truthful, ideal self state, but that meant that we were focusing away from each other in time. This is the best information I can give you in an abstract, empirical sense for you to comprehend what is happening when you experience death. Death is a refocusing of awareness to the central core timeline where that being is actually eternal. From my cat's point of view, she did not die, but I died. Instead of her going out on the front porch one day and then getting bitten and then dying, I went out. She stayed home. She's still alive, sitting in her cat box, cat bed or something like that. And I'm going out and I'm going to go in the car and get some groceries. And whatever, I get hit by a Mack truck on the road and I never come home. And that would be one of these timelines over here that bring me to the membrane of death. So she stayed alive and maybe got adopted by some of my friends or something like that. and then went on to continue to live her eternal life as a cat. This is deep stuff because each person and each animal or organism has an eternal self, has an eternal, perfect trajectory going back to the source that emanated them. But you might not be experiencing that timeline along with them. In fact, when you start to learn about the structure of time, each one of us, as we are focusing towards our ideal timeline and away from the peripheries, we are focusing away from most other lives. That as you become closer to your ascension timeline, many other people who lived at the same time as you and who may have known you or known about you perceive you as dying. You're not dying, but your consciousness is focusing away from them in time. So this means that my cat does have an eternal presence that is not in a fluffy, imagined kitty cat heaven. It is actually a real embodiment state where she lives, in a garden in Northern California, but I'm not on those timelines. I don't live there with her. She lives there with someone else. And she might remember me. Like, oh, yeah, that was that lady. She used to give me chicken and tuna. She's not here anymore. She's somewhere else. But she might not know what am I doing. That I'm like alive, eating milkshakes and hamburgers and walking on a treadmill. I did not eat a milkshake today, I promise you. But we are in different areas of the time field. When I tell you these things, I hope that it is not to be used as a way to avoid, deny, or sidestep grief. As my grief for my cat was very, very real. The loss is real. To me, she died. She is not here with me anymore, and I definitely felt very bereft. And I was so sad when it happened. This was many, many years ago, before I adopted Cheeky. That's why I adopted Cheeky. But I hope you can comprehend this. The people and animals that you love and care about that died are alive on a different timeline or a different area of the time field that you do not occupy, and they perceive you as being dead. This is actually the accurate way of considering afterlife. All of the other stuff that people use to define afterlife is relatively unhealthy and is based in a type of mania that supports the lower astral, because death is an aberration that we were never supposed to experience. When death came to our world, or when we entered into this world where death became an experienced reality, not just an abstract potential, there was a type of psychotic break where people were like, but they can't be gone. They have to be somewhere. But instead of visualizing them as like living on an alternative timeline, but still in the world, people started to construct astral realms that they call the afterlife. And that is what started to populate the membrane of death. Started to slow down consciousness from its journey. When it meets the membrane of death, the consciousness should be like, oops, I'm in the wrong place. Oh, well, my mistake. Let me get back to where I'm supposed to be, get back into the time flow and go in the right direction. But when you have something that is set up as an afterlife, either a punishment afterlife like hell, or a reward afterlife, pardon me, my math doesn't work, afterlife like heaven, consciousness gets stuck. The stuck stuff, the undigested emotional truths of a life experience, the fatty blockages or arterial blockages in the larger circulatory system of the alive animal we know as time. Afterlife, as it is presently being explored, is an unhealthy mania and a psychosis that is adding to the junk or blockages and obstacles that consciousness has to endure in order to be able to get through the area after death and be able to find eternal life. Let's talk about the ancient Egyptians. Let's talk about ancient Tibet. Let's talk about even the ancient Hindu culture. All of these cultures and the Maya, as Pedro brought them up, represent vestigial traces and fragment holders of the original wisdom from the highly sophisticated antediluvian civilization we know as Atlantis. In Atlantis, nobody ever died. We never experienced death. We all went perfectly up that central core timeline. That means there was no one on the membrane of death. Think about a world like that. We didn't eat any bananas or potatoes. There are no dead organisms. There are no dead anything. And we certainly do not die. It is a perfectly clear highway with nothing on it and total clarity and no traffic, right? No traffic blockages on the highway. And when death was invented, the consciousnesses that went there were largely unresolved. And there so much to be said about that. When I even said that statement to myself, I'm like, well, how am I going to talk about this and this and this? Because the way that people died or imperilment are about to die in ancient Atlantis is indirectly related to the planetary invasion of Mars to Earth. That they killed those people by coming into this world. They invented death. Mars is known in your mythology as the god of war. And these consciousnesses from that, I even hesitate to call them consciousnesses, but let's say organisms from Mars that came into this world and forced themselves into the genetic code, they made people's chakras go from like this to like this. They pushed everybody aside. They pushed everybody askew. And that caused an immediate amount of immediate death. An enormous amount is what I was trying to say. That caused an enormous amount of immediate death. And then you have all of these consciousnesses frozen in trauma, stuck on the membrane of death. And they had no cognitive ability to comprehend what was happening or how they got there. It's the ultimate trauma. And the ones who created that event and who were working with time destabilization technology, they intentionally killed themselves or destroyed themselves in such a way that they would be, I call them turds who refuse to flush, stuck on the membrane of time, but without resolution. Because when you die, for example, like being a carrot that I'm going to eat, chomp, 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 you don't get stuck on the membrane of death. The carrot is like, oh, I was alive. Now I'm dead. And now someone's eaten me. And that their energy simply flows. And I asked in my preparation as I was meditating and preparing for today's class, I'm like, well, okay, what would an eternal carrot look like? Because if we say this is the shape of the life of an organism, including a carrot, and being askew would be any eventuality where a farmer picks the carrot and then delivers it to Aurora's plate for her to place in her mouth, right? That those are all non-viable timelines for the carrot. What would the ascension timeline or eternal timeline look like to the carrot? And this is deep stuff because the answer that I got is, or are, that all of the carrots that we presently have that are like these very juicy orange roots are genetic aberrations and things that actually shouldn't exist. The original plant is known as the wild carrot, and it looks like Queen Anne's lace. So the eternal form, I had to actually like kind of go back to who I know I am in Atlantis in order to comprehend this. The eternal form of the carrot would really look like a flower, and the carrot that we eat would be under the ground. This sense of like, what would an eternal carrot look like as a question speaks so much to how our need for eating physical food means that we have changed the bodies of many different plants and animals to be shaped differently than their wild feral state. And so their eternal state would not look like the domesticated plant or animal that we raise for food. And it also would not be just a part of the plant, because we only eat parts of plants. Like mostly you eat the root of the carrot, and mostly you're not eating the tops or the flowers or the seeds, but all of those things exist as a part of the plant. So even the identity of like, what do we consider to be a carrot? It would be like, where do wild drumsticks roam? Like, they're not drumsticks. They're actually chickens' legs, and they're parts of chickens, and they would run around and be like chickens. So there is not a carrot on the membrane of death. Again, like judging you. Like you're eating more of my brethren, and then more dead carrot souls end up on the membrane of death until your whole entire world is lined with like this gauntlet of judgment of all of the different foods and everything that you've eaten while you eat more and more and more. No, in fact, all of that judgment, throw it all away. And I've made like a huge mental cartoon out of it because I wanted to ridicule it, because that is the mind state of the invader. The invader implants eating disorder into human beings, because the invader knows that the invader should not be eating these resources and should not be accessing the food and nourishment of this world, but it is trying to do so through genetic invasion and through you. Please refer to the predator's mind teaching that I did from, referring to Carlos Castaneda, active side of infinity, and keeping humans in humaneros, like chicken coops, and raising humans for food. All of that is the predator's mind. And that is the mind they implanted inside of you so that then you would domesticate carrots, domesticate Queen Anne's, and then grow it as carrots so that you could have a viable food crop and keep yourself alive and sustained. But please know that you are not the invader. You, who are my wonderful audience, like there are invaders in this world, they're not a part of my class. I only have good people in my class, and you guys are the original native inhabitants of this realm. I know you from ancient Atlantis or concurrent Atlantis. And you guys all know that you belong here, you belong in this world is for you, you respect the resources of this place, and you know that you're supposed to be sustained by the resources of this place. And for right now, what that looks like is eating food, plants and animals and minerals, etc., all the things that we need, water, in order to stay alive. But the invaders from Mars, they should not be having these things. So the invaders from Mars judge themselves. They give themselves eating disorder. They're like, really shouldn't be eating this stuff. I shouldn't be eating these chocolates, sugars, or anything. I'm talking as an invader. I'm an invader. And I'm, a genetic hijacker riding along in these people's bodies and eating stuff that doesn't belong here. That's not you. That is an invader's mindset. I was just speaking in air quotes and acting things out. That's not who I am. I am not an invader. I am an original Atlantis inhabitant, and I have already ascended, transcended, and I'm back here in order to, we're putting the band together. Yeah, we're getting in order to help humanity, in order to protect and facilitate the ongoing ascension that is happening here right now. But I'm most certainly not just some random stranger who decided to pop into a body on this planet like some kind of a cosmic voyeur and just use a bunch of your resources and make myself at home. No, that is not who and what I am. I'm not just here on a sightseeing tour. So let me hydrate. I want to talk about ancient Egypt. So when Atlantis fell, or Atlantis is about to fall and be fragmented into various different pieces, the various different pieces, all that held vestigial traces of the original culture, and all of those cultural puzzle pieces were held in mystery traditions throughout the entire world. So we have access to some of them that have not been sanitized from the record, and that includes the ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead. But that's not what it's really called. It's actually called the Ancient Egyptian Book of Coming Forth into Day. And it was mistranslated in the 1800s when Western, Northern European culture, with English speakers just starting to learn about it through the translational portals, what I want to call it, called the Rosetta Stone. The Rosetta Stone allowed a rough translation and a comprehension of the phonemes and meanings of many Egyptian hieroglyphics, but it did not allow a cultural lens of comprehension. So all of the cultural baggage and ethnocentrism of the time was projected upon the world of ancient Egypt. They said this means the book of the dead. They didn't have a comprehension of coming forth into day. So really the Egyptians did not look at death as the end. They looked at it as the emergence of your spiritual light body form into a higher dimensional reality. Now, as I talk about these things, I just want to make sure that you know on a deep level. I'm just grabbing my sculpture here. The flying rainbow lasagna I invented and innovated in 2001. That means since 2001, you have more options available to you than were available previous to that. You don't have to die. You don't have to have a mortality event in order to achieve transcendence or go in a positive direction as a soul. Death can be done in a way that is unconscious and imprisoning and soul wearying, or death can be done in a way that is conscious, intentional, and brings the experiencer on a journey of refinement towards greater levels of eternal longevity. All right. Death now, at this moment, since flying rainbow lasagna has been invented, is not optimum. It was always an aberration. In the time before lasagna was invented, you could die in a bad way or you could die in a good way, but you didn't really have another option. Now you have another option. So you don't want to just die in a good way. But there is such a thing as dying in a good way, and that is when you have continuity of consciousness. So the meditation practitioners from Asia really have codified how to achieve continuity of consciousness through meditational exercises. These are like cheat sheets and ways to be able to maintain who you are from lifetime to lifetime. But you want to evolve. You don't just want to be like, yep, I'm the same old turd from lifetime to lifetime, and I'm not changing and I'm not growing and I'm going to keep on being bad and doing bad stuff. No, that is not what you want. You want to be able to remember yourself as consciousness going through a variety of experiences. So lucid dreaming is the beginning of the training of your mental state to be able to achieve continuity of consciousness between different self states. It's like diving like a dolphin. So here you are in your daily awake consciousness, and you're like, my name is, I'll think my name is Aurora. My name is Aurora. And then when you sleep, you dive down into the sub-on or supra consciousness. And then it's hard to remember. They're like, who am I? Who am I? I don't know. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm doing all sorts of different stuff. And then when you wake up in the morning, you have to go through that membrane. That membrane is like going across customs. And you get, what's it called? Not sequestered, but when they appropriate or commandeer or take from you your souvenirs. They're like, you're not allowed to take this across the border. This is the border between waking and sleeping. They're like, no, you're not allowed to they search your suitcase for contraband. They're like, no, you're not allowed to have this. No. Okay, you can have this vague memory. Now go home. And you go home and then you wake up, you open up your suitcase and you're like, I don't remember anything. What was I doing last night? Oh, well, I'm Aurora. Time for me to get up and make coffee and do stuff, okay? That is not continuity of consciousness. Continuity of consciousness is when you're able to bypass customs and the border patrol and come through with all of your contraband intact. And that means when you dive down into sleep, you remember who you are and you're like, yep, I'm Aurora and I'm doing weird stuff in my dreams. Then you wake up and you come through the membrane that separates waking from sleeping. And you're like, yep, I remember what I was doing all night while I was resting my body. I was doing this and I was going here and I was experiencing this and I was experiencing this. And this is mental training to be able to do this. You need more than mental training. You need the inner proclivity. Some people are really good at this. And then also you need to do the mental training to be able to work your muscles. So this is some people's gift is to be a dreamer and to be a lucid dreamer on these levels. And that means that you have the potential, but you must develop the potential. So there are different training exercises you can do to be able to build your muscles. Most of these are attention building exercises, and you must get into a habit during the day of building your attention. Like some people do things where they look for their eyelashes, which sounds weird, but like as you're looking out in the world, just be like, can I see my eyelashes in my peripheral vision or not? Can I see them or can I not see them? Or some people do like looking at their hand. And they look at their hand while they're awake. And they're like, look at your hand. Am I awake? Am I asleep? Am I awake? Am I asleep? Continue asking yourself that all throughout your day. Am I awake? Am I asleep? Some people do it whenever they walk through a doorway or whenever they turn on a light switch. Am I awake or am I asleep? Mental training the muscles. And then when you go to sleep at night, you have to watch yourself like a dolphin, diving down through successive layers of deeper and deeper and deeper consciousness. And remember and watch yourself. And then go through all of your experiences and then keep on remembering who you are. And then when you wake up in the morning, don't wake up with an alarm clock. Don't have like some jarring music going on that shakes up your brain. You wake up before you even open your eyes, you try to open up your suitcase and find your souvenirs. Be like, remember back, like, what was I just doing? What was I doing before that? What was I doing before that? Some people who are really good at this, they form like a mental mansion and they can remember all the way back to the beginning of the dream at when they first fell asleep at night. And then you go through your whole entire day. And then when you go to sleep and you do lucid dreaming again, you pick up where you left off. So that's like, okay, if I'm working on a knitting project or whatever, it doesn't just disappear when I put down my knitting needles. Then when I wake up, then I'm going to go back to it. Same thing when you're dreaming. That the idea that when you're dreaming and it's uncontrolled, it's ephemeral and it just evaporates. And that's good if it's a nightmare. If it's scary clowns or evil spiders or whatever, it's like, may that dream evaporate and not be eternal for you. But if it's something that's important that you're actually working on, just as my house has stability of form. Like if I go to sleep with dirty dishes at night, I wake up in the morning, the dirty dishes are still there. They didn't magically disappear. Ho hum. Of course, that doesn't happen. But also the good stuff that I have in my life doesn't magically disappear. Like my paintings. I made my paintings. I wake up, go to sleep at night. They're not going to disappear. Wake up in the morning. They're still there. Hooray. When you work on dream projects, develop the same level of continuity, where whatever you were working on or doing when you fell asleep, you are able to return to it and build something over many, many, many nights or even months or even longer times to be able to do that. And yes, I'm hearing your telepathic questing. The answer to your question is yes. You can also meet with other people who are similarly in a lucid state when they are dreaming at night, and you have a shared dream space. Many indigenous cultures practice this. It's hard because you got to have a band. You got to have someone to play with. Not everybody does this, and a lot of people go to sleep either drunk or tranquilized or whatever, that they don't know what's going on in their dream state and they're not prepared to be in community while they are in dream state. And that is fine. And I recognize that. I'm not judging anyone. But yes, you can connect with other people who are in a lucid state and have friendships and build community over time. Yes, I do run a dream academy, use air quotes there. But depending upon what's going on in my life, sometimes I'm busy running the world economy and I can't always do class in dreaming, but sometimes I have my classroom and you can find me there. So it depends on what's going on. But it's a powerful state to be able to do something like that. Okay, so let's now relate lucid dreaming to lifetime, not just daytime, nighttime, but one life, non-being or death state, and then your next life or concurrent existence, because linear time language is not equivalent to be able to talk about these things because you're living multiple lives at once. It's not just a linear sense, but just please know that some of the meditators from Asia have passed on through the oral traditions of their lineage the ways that they have figured out to be able to remember themselves from lifetime to lifetime. And they're not always good people, actually, in the things that they're doing. What does that mean? Where's my judgment? Sometimes what they're doing is abusing power. Sometimes these monks are not the most moral, ethical, and focused on serving their community type of people that we would envision them as, because they are part of a spiritual tradition. We want to presume that they're all good people and that they're not just trying to do something to help themselves, but sometimes they're just in it for their own spiritual advancement. And that is a difficult truth to be able to recognize. So let's talk about, in parallel to the Egyptian book of coming forth in today, Tibetan Book of the Dead. Tibetan Book of the Dead is also known as Bardo Todal. Terrible pronunciation. Please forgive me. That is not a language that I can pronounce effectively. But this Tibetan information comes not only out of Chinese Buddhism, but also Buddhism as it comes from the Hindu tradition, but also comes out of ancient vestigial traces of antediluvian Atlantis culture. And some of these meditators and people with superpowers are a little bit in mania, and they're looking for ways to be able to preserve themselves from lifetime to lifetime, which is, of course, the antithesis of the real teaching of Buddhism, which is about the essence of impermanence. Like here today, gone tomorrow. Don't get too attached, right? But these guys are definitely practicing attachment to their consciousness and to their cognitive structures. And they found ways to be able to float down the river of time with some structure intact. So, I mean, if you're a great person, you can be like, hooray, I saved a lot of lives. I'm an awesome person. And now I'm going to float down the river of time and I'm going to remember I'm an awesome person. And then I'm going to come out the next, baby infant existence and I'm going to keep on being an awesome person. But what if you're like, no, like, what if you killed people or raped people or did something really bad? And then you're like remembering that you still did that. And then you go into your next life and you're like, yep, I killed, I raped, I pillaged, I plundered, and I'm back for more. Not me. I'm pretending to be someone else. That would not be very good and that would not be very positive. The Tibetan Book of the Dead speaks about the trials that the newly dead person will experience going across the bardo. The bardo is directly analogous to and is another word for what the ancient Egyptians called the duat, D-U-A-T, known as an interim world, a gray place of wandering, not a giant, beautiful, fluffy white cloud, heavenly reality. This is more akin to the movie that I often reference, Judgment City, the movie Spending Your Life, which is admittedly like a comedy. It's not a stupid comedy, but a relatively silly comedy. But I like that movie, and it's pretty much the handbook that you've got in this culture. And they based it upon these ancient manuals. So in the ancient world, if you were a practitioner in Asia, or if you came from pre-pharaonic Egypt, you would have a whole lineage teaching you. In fact, your whole entire life would be devoted to comprehending what the afterlife is and creating a positive and benevolent after existence for yourself, not focusing on materialism, which is trying to get cool stuff now. They were not interested in getting cool stuff now. They were interested in forming an effective raft of consciousness that they could use to float down the river of time. Having a golden toilet seat is trying to get cool stuff now. That is being materialistic. Focusing on your cultivation and sense of who you are as a soul, self-evolution, self-excavation, and self-construction, that is building your raft for the future. Let's hug Cheeky, Cheeky girl. Cheeky, you're a good dog, and we love you very much. Good job, good job. Might need to open the door and let Cheeky go outside. But first, we just have a nice little hug over here. Cheeky's amazing. Cheeky did a good job this morning. We did lots of good stuff, and we helped in our friend's garden. Okay, Cheeky, do you want to go outside? You want to go outside? Hold on, guys. Let's just open the door really fast. And so Cheeky goes to go outside. Go outside, baby? Go out? No? Oh, you know what we need to do? Let me turn off the camera for a minute. Cheeky needs bribes. Just bribe Cheeky. Hold on, guys. That brief break. So defending your life is the closest thing that you have to like a lineage of ancient gurus and masters to try to guide you through your afterlife experience. Yes, you have the comedic work of James Brooks and Meryl Streep, okay? And that's what will be your guiding thing when you die. No, I'm joking because, of course, you do not have to die. Of course, this particular curriculum that I'm sharing with you is all about the death journey. But really, those of you who are interested in being Flying Rainbow Lasagna participants or to embody this or to live this truth, you do not have to die. Because death is not simply mispositioning of your chakras. It is also a genetic behavior. And the genetic behavior is what was implanted into humanity. And then the expectation of continuing that genetic behavior was passed down from generation to generation. And you have very, very few examples of masters who ascended and transcended the necessity of death without having this mortality experience. It's like having very, very few successful athletes who have ever finished the marathon. You had a lot of people who ran the marathon, but then they ended up on the sidelines. So they had a shoelace that broke, or they didn't drink enough Gatorade, or their knee hurt, or whatever was going on in their body, and they didn't finish the marathon. So here's the name of a couple of people who are known as spiritual ascended masters who finished the marathon. Lao Tzu. This is a teacher that's at the foundation of what is known as Taoism. And they say that he did not die a physical death, that he simply transcended reality. And I like this one a lot because they say that he took his horse, his loyal steed, he took his horse with him, or his horse was also ascending at the same time. They both like rose up into glory and became just a ball of light. Because you know, I'm thinking I'm going to rise up with Cheeky. Okay, we are go everywhere together. We are definitely going to ascend together. So that's why I like that one a lot. Some other people that you may have heard of are Daganawida, and this is a name that is spelled in many different ways because it's part of the oral tradition of the Iroquois Native Americans of Northeast North America. So sometimes it's Daganawida, Tiwanawida, all these different ways of spelling it. But he was known as the peacemaker, and he shares a lot of parallels to the description of the religious figure that you know as Jesus, in like virgin birth, bringing peace to the world, bringing like laws of behavior and other forms of what would be seen as like, you know, positive behavioral control, a civilizing factor, and didn't die, but rose up into a ball of light. Okay. And of course, there's Jesus, but Jesus died, suffered, crucified, suffered horribly on the cross, according to the religion, which is also death cult stuff. Let's talk about the ancient religion, but it's not really religion. It's known as the funerary tradition of Egypt, both modern, closer to your times Egypt, and what is known as pre-pharaonic Egypt, meaning before the pharaohs. Because before the pharaohs, there was actually a time when Egypt was ruled by women, a matriarchy that has been erased. That's the patriarchy eraser that erases out evidences of matriarchies or societies where women were in charge and where women ruled. Even to the point of in the 1800s, when Northern ethnocentric European society was exploring Egypt for the first time and learning about the hieroglyphics, and they saw all of these domestic sculptures that were like a man and a woman, and they're obviously like married in partnership, but the woman is always like standing forward of the man, is always bigger than the man, and sometimes the woman is kind of like holding on to the man kind of around like this, like I'm bigger than you and I'm protecting you. And they made up all these crazy stories about it, about why there is that shape in sculptures and everything like that. They couldn't admit, like, the women were in charge, and that's why they were bigger in the sculpture. And it's why they stood forward in the sculpture. That's why they had their arms around their males, like in that way. It was a totally different way that was so alien to the people of Great Britain in the 1800s. They're like, women cannot be the head of a household. That's no, I don't know why these women are portrayed as so large in sculptures. Let's not talk about it. Okay, on to the next thing. All right, great. But thank you very much, Aurora's Comedy Hour. But truthfully, this is what actually genuinely happened. And I am here to tell you that the time before the pharaohs in Egypt was an incredibly elevated and very, very special and important time in, you know, human civilization and human culture. It was a highly evolved level of civilization, similar to the Hindu culture that it birthed the concept of zero, the empty set. You know, people who were so profoundly civilized that they spent their days counting flowers. That's the level of civilization that these ancient Egyptians had. Of course, I don't want you guys to die, but I'm just giving you a window on their cultural truth. To them, the daily experiences that you have here in the mundane world were all training exercises and education and preparation for the time when you would no longer be physically embodied. Like you're a caterpillar eating stuff for the day when you will be a butterfly. They had all sorts of different mystery traditions and training regimens that were about like how to be a spiritual ninja, how to get through obstacles. Because you got this show that's like this ninja show. You know what I mean? I'm sure you guys have seen it. These athletes have to go through the obstacle course. Like they have to jump across a thing and they have to swing on a rope. And they have to go with these overhead things and they have to avoid the obstacles and they have to do this thing. That is very similar to what they made aspirants go through in these ancient temples. It was a physical embodiment training exercise to be physically healthy and fit, but it also was about training one's mentality, because truly this is about building the raft of your consciousness for when you set sail into the ocean of consciousness. You guys will set sail into the ocean of consciousness in the raft that you've built, but not through a mortality event. You're not going to die. Your planet is not going to get blown up. You're not going to have crustal displacement. You're not going to have a nuclear war. You're not going to have zombie apocalypse. Please listen when I tell you this truth. But what you are doing is flying rainbow lasagna-ing. So when we do this dance, like on Tuesday mornings, I have a little informal group that we get together and we do this dance. And we dance for about an hour. And that's kind of like going out into the ocean of consciousness, like paddling out. If you're a surfer, I am not a surfer in physical reality, and I would never go out into the ocean because I don't know what I'm doing. Like there's giant waves and very scary animals out there. But in the ocean of consciousness, I know how to do flying rainbow lasagna, surfing the time waves very, very well. So we go out, we swim, we surf the time waves, and then we come back into our physical embodiment form and reintegrate with society and with the five senses reality. But one day we will go out into that ocean of consciousness and we will dance the lasagna and we will not swim back. We will not come back into our regular everyday world of emails and Geico bills and grocery stores and all of the other things you have to do, piles of laundry, both clean and dirty, and various scrubbings and chores around the house, dirty dishes. We will not return into that world. We will simply continue dancing in an extremely elevated, ascended, higher dimensional space. All right. That will be an amazing day. That would be a cosmic dance party day. But for now, what we do is we make these little forays out and then we come back in and return and integrate with all of the energy and positive experience that we got from going out into there. These are also muscle building exercises so that you learn, like you can't learn to swim on dry land. You can't learn to surf on the actual beach. You have to get into the water. You have to get into the waters of consciousness to be able to learn how to navigate, to build the muscles, to build the strength, to be able to move through these larger time currents without being destroyed. So you've got Defend Your Life, Meryl Streep, and you've got Flying Rainbow Lasagna dance class with me. And these things are what you can use to prepare yourself for the time and for the moment when you will have to swim, you will have to surf, you will have to navigate these time waves. We're already doing it. When I tell you there is a tsunami of light coming into this planet and that it is restructuring your nation states, world economies, and tariff structures and small businesses, that's what is going on. You're starting to have to navigate. And actually, it's a good teachable experience there because part of it is the genuine aspect of not non-attachment, but embracing change. Because in these larger time field tsunamis that are happening, you must be prepared for endings of former paradigms, endings of former chapters, destabilization of what once was stable and the foundation of your existence so that you can build anew. And that's really important. Sometimes I use as the example, one of the very, very few human video games that I know about. I do not know anything about video games, but I do know a little bit about Ms. Pac-Man. And I also know the game called Frogger. So in Frogger, this is like from the 1980s, you have these logs and these logs are going by and you have to jump from log to log because if your log goes by and you don't have a log anymore, you go into the water and you drown, you die, even though you're a frog. And technically frogs would not die. So you want to stay on a log. Logs are life. This is time. So if you're this little frog and the log is going by, you have to find your next log. And that can be a life circumstance. These are not just patterns for you to follow in your after existence as worms crawl in and out and play pinochle on your snout as your body is decomposing in the earth. This is life circumstances and then also after existence, but really your after existence will not be after a mortality event. So you're going to have your body and you're not going to be rotting in the earth, but you must learn to jump from situation and circumstance to the next paradigm, context, situation, or circumstance. It can be this former relationship, like a friendship or a partnership or a lover or even being married, a spouse. It can become a log that is no longer relevant to you. And you get to the end of that log where you're like, okay, I ran out of log. I'm going to have to jump And that means you have to literally jump timelines into a new context where you might not be friends with that person anymore, or you might not be in a business partnership with them, or you might not be in a personal or sexual partnership with them anymore. You must embrace change. You must allow that there will be endings in order for continuity of consciousness and new beginnings to happen. And you must jump joyfully and joyously. And the best way to do it is not through anger and hatred, like, oh, I'm in this relationship or whatever, my log is running out. And then you're like, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you, get out of my life, jump. It's better to jump being like, oh, like over here. Much, much better to jump when you're kind of in the middle of the log over here. And you're like, this relationship isn't that satisfying to me anymore. This friendship doesn't really do it for me. I wish I was with someone else. Jump. And then when you jump, you're like joyfully and joyously release the former situation, and from your higher self be like, gratitude, like, thank you so much for what we shared. I'm going in a new direction now, right? Because really anger, hatred, bitterness, vitriol, these things, they kind of hold you back a little bit. You're trying to jump and you're like, I hate you, like F you forever. It kind of holds you to the old, it's a charge, the emotional charge kind of holds you to the old paradigm. So from the highest self, what you do are these gracious releases or jumping into the next chapter. And that sometimes it's not that easy to do, because I recognize that you might have valid anger at former friends or partners. But what you try to do is to just recognize on an abstract level, you need to change. Just like I showed you on that graph, both me and my cat were moving from a coincidental overlapping area into areas where we don't coincide anymore. And there's not animosity, hatred, or any kind of heavy, unpleasant emotions between me and my cat. In fact, I loved her very much. So there's only celebration, like, thank you for being in my life as much as you were. I will miss you very much that we are not together anymore. These are like the ways that you honor the places where there were crossing points in your life, in your time. Coincidence doesn't mean random opportunity. It means where timelines coincide. In math, timelines converge, they coincide, and the area of coincidence is where your timelines overlap with other lives. And it's not possible for your timelines to 100% overlap with anybody else's life. This is the ultimate in recognizing the time graph. All of these different multiple timelines all cluster around the central core, like a dandelion seed head. And the inevitability is for each one of these lives to find the journey back home. But as you are doing that, you are necessarily focusing away from everyone else and continuing on your own self-directed path. Age of Aquarius. Direct your own path. Other people can make their own choices. Other people might have they might have opinions about you and your choices, but please do not allow them to destabilize you. And definitely, oh, here we go. Chiqui's back in. Let me close the door. Good job, Chiqui. Good job. Good job. Okay, good job. It's crazy, Chiqui. Good job. You definitely, you can't be angry about the end of your log, or blameful is a better way of saying it. Can't be blameful about the end of your log. Sometimes it's a no blame divorce or separation, where it's just like, no, it's not wrongness or inadequacy on anybody's personal level. It's that your timelines don't match anymore. And you can really embody that on a higher state, on the highest level. Sometimes it can be hard with marriages and partnerships, but definitely with friendships. Because with marriages and partnerships, there is a contract. You wore a dress in a church. People clapped. You're sealed together. And it's very, very hard to unbreak that seal. But with partnerships and friendships, like business partnerships and friendships, it's usually like an informal connection, and it's vibe. And if you're not feeling in alignment with the person any longer, there's not a contract. And you can simply recognize that you have moved in different directions in the time field. Totally acceptable to recognize this. So you honor the person by being like, thank you. We shared overlapping timelines for a certain amount of time, and now we're not overlapping anymore. Say, good luck on your journey. I wish you positive things in the direction that you are going. I am going over here, and you can't hold other people onto your timeline. This is a very painful lesson because you might be going in a positive direction for you, but it would be anti-positive for them. You're going in, you're literally aligning yourself upward like this. But if you're trying to align someone else upward like this, maybe it's not the right direction for them. Each person must choose their own direction. So when you have this cluster of time vortexes where everybody is all like a compass needle going more and more and more towards their own inner divine connection and remembrance as source and as destination and as God, it means that you're really focusing away from all of these other organisms. And you focus away from almost every other pathway and organism until it's just you and God. And that's yourself and yourself as God. And then when you're at that moment of God, all of these selves are focused at God, and you are all focused in the focal point of God's self-remembrance. So it's a little bit of a self-conflict, conflictory statements, because on the one hand, you are becoming more and more and more yourself. But on the other hand, you are having to focus away from your commonalities with others, the areas where your lives overlap. It is a very individual and distinct journey. And it's not a journey that you do with other people. So we have companions and comrades, and people who we journey with, but we aren't with them for the whole entire journey. And that is truthful of how we did things in ancient Atlantis, where we didn't die and we ascended. So what was it like in ancient Atlantis? Everybody was always perfectly over in the central core timeline like this. We never wavered. But that means that some lives you did not overlap with. Like if this is one central core timeline, you could have another person over here. And literally, there are no areas of coincidence. They lived in the world. They did their thing. You never met them or knew about them or had any kind of impact or conflict or education from them. And then there were some people where you did have interactions, moved apart, and then came back together again in the actual ascension experience, where you had where you got to retrospect and think back on your life. So essentially, in that level of reality, you never hit the membrane of death. So you don't go to Judgment City. You don't have your life assessment. No one with a clipboard comes along and says, oh, here's all the good things and bad things that you've done. And now we're going to look at the journey of your soul. Do that when you're alive. Get your life review while you're alive, but it's kind of like your exit interview as you are graduating and then going to a higher dimensional state. And when you go to a higher dimensional state as a light being, as in ascension, it means that you're no longer a part of the matter world. You're not made of matter anymore. You're made of pure light. And if you're made of pure light, you don't interact with the world of pure matter. You go into a world of light. And in Atlantis, we eat physical food. So it's not about like eschewing physical food, but it's more like, are you touching physical grass? Are you a part of the world of like grass and trees and crystals? Or are you a part of a world of pure light that's at a much, much faster, accelerated level? And that is what we experienced. So in ancient Egypt, there's a myth about Isis, Osiris, and Set. Set sounds a lot like Seth, and Set also sounds a lot like Satan. That is who that represents. Set was supposed to be red and scaly. These are satanics. Those are what satanic space races look like. Set was said to live on Mars. That's who that civilization, I hesitate to even say civilization because they are not civilized. They're highly barbaric. But who they were as an organization, they lived on Mars. And according to the mythology, Isis and Osiris were beautiful husband and wife, and they were married, and they lived on Earth, and they were immortals, and they ruled over a world of immortality where death never existed. Set saw their happiness and was jealous, and decided that he would sabotage the happiness and destroy Osiris. So what he did was he had to create some kind of a golden coffin or something like that that would turn this guy who was immortal into something or someone who was vulnerable so he could be killed. So he was entrapped in a type of apparatus, and then he was suffocated, and then he was dismembered, and basically his whole entire body was chopped up into pieces and spread out all across the surface of Earth. And this is the allegory for the death of the civilization that we know as Atlantis. That there was an invader who was jealous from Mars, that saw the happiness and balance on Earth, decided to destroy it in some way, and then chopped up the remnants of the corpse into the various different land masses or cultures that then held on to parts of that knowledge. And there's all sorts of stuff also in the story of Isis and Osiris about like bringing Osiris back to life, a reanimation, but it's not to life. What his wife did was actually, she was very, very sad and bereaved. She gathered up all of the pieces of the dead society of Osiris and put them together. This is what the original mummy was, sewed them all together. And then she used sex magic to reanimate that guy because they lost his penis. The most important part they lost. So she fashioned a golden phallus and then did sex magic on the dead corpse. This is a little strange and also not family friendly. I should have warned you. And there was a reanimation event. But all of the gods who are immortals watched this and they're like, we've got this Osiris mummy guy now. And he's not dead and dismembered, but he's not alive as he once was. What is he? And they're like, oh, he's dead. And now he's the Lord of the underworld. Now there's a place called the underworld. The invention of the afterlife, the invention of the underworld. There never used to be an underworld. There didn't have to be an underworld. There was no consciousness to be there. There was no need to have a house for those consciousnesses. So Osiris was called the king of the underworld, and then he was given the empowerment to rule over the underworld. And there's a lot of commonalities between that myth and the myth of Jesus. As you know, these are all death cults, but I think that the Jesus myth is highly corrosive because it also talks about the death of the spiritual leader known as Jesus, and that then he wasn't fully dead. He arose and became the ruler of an afterlife heaven, and where he is the judge of heaven to determine who is an appropriate aspirant or applicant to be able to enter into his realm. Very strong parallels between the Jesus who is the judge of heaven and the Osiris who is the mythological ruler of the underworld. And so when we talk about the ancient Egyptian funerary tradition, here are their beliefs. The beliefs are that there, just as you are creating your own individual raft, there is a raft known as the sun bark of Ra. Ra is the sun, the giant ball of consciousness that is in the sky up above us each and every day. The Egyptians looked at that as a mini cycle within larger cycles. Birth happens at sunrise. Here is the sun bark coming forward, and it's coming forward into day. And it says, I'm alive, I'm alive, I'm alive. And then that's birth. And then here at noon, this is middle age. And then here, as the sun is setting, this is older age. And then finally, death. And then going around the other side of the planet at night was considered to be journey across the underworld, a time of darkness and confusion. The journey across the underworld was portrayed in the ancient Egyptian, truly ancient, non-corrupt, non-hijacked by their, I want to say priestocracy, their aristocracy of priests, a sense of protection for wandering souls who are very vulnerable. Like if you don't have a gang or someone to protect you when you're in the afterlife underworld, you're just going to get harmed by a bunch of barbaric ruffians, hooligans, criminals, and insane fragments. So it's a very, very difficult place to get across. The idea of ancient Egypt was that you are going across this duat, dangerous place of wandering where you can get very confused and very attacked, but then you want to make it to the other side. Break on through to the other side. Gotta get to the sunbark of Ra. You're supposed to create your own miniature raft and then get yourself across this difficult passage and then join with the greats. That's when you get on board of this amazing solar vehicle and you are immortal and you're there with all of the gods and goddesses like Osiris. They're hanging out, having the most fun, amazing dance party. And actually, as an interesting aside, fun fact, in the original religion, Set was supposed to be on the prow, the very, very front of the sunbark of Ra. And he was supposed to have a magical spear that he could use to be able to defeat, I think it's called Apopsis, the serpent of death. It's like serpent of darkness. As the sun is trying to rise each day, there is a giant snake of darkness that stands in front of it with its mouth open. And it's like trying to eat the sun. And it was, according to mythology, I hope I'm not confusing you, Set, the evil, scaly red guy from Mars, who was supposed to actually protect all of the heavenly greats by destroying this evil snake of darkness so that the sun could burst forward. In fact, it is a battle that the ancient Egyptians would talk about as happening every day. Every day was a fight for the fabric of space-time, where it's like the sun is trying to rise and evil forces of darkness and chaos is like, no, you're not allowed to rise. And then the successful battle and the sun rises and it's like, hooray, celebrate the sun. I bring this back now to our conversation from earlier today where I was talking about you can't take consciousness for granted. You must look at it and consider it as an unlikely phenomenon to be respected, celebrated, and fostered into existence. You can't just take the sun for granted. As sure as the sun shall rise, it will happen. It's easy. This happens like nothing. No, it's actually every day a giant battle to see if the sun can actually rise. Every day for the sun to come forward and give this beautiful light of consciousness to us. The ancient Egyptians looked at it as the successful culmination and victory over darkness, chaos, and death. And that we can't take the sun for granted. We must celebrate it in coming forward and being here. And that when the sun sets, it's kind of like, you're not guaranteed tomorrow. Do you understand? It is about respect for consciousness, respect for time, respect for the moment that you have now, and respect for the life-giving light, consciousness, intelligence, data, everything that comes from the sun, timelines, that sustains us. So if you ever have a conversation with Satan, you can be like, hey, traditionally, you're supposed to be an ally who's supposed to fight the forces of darkness, chaos, and evil so that the sun can even arise every day. What are you doing with yourself here? What are you doing with yourself these days? Life's going down the toilet. And you're not being who you're supposed to be. That's just me. I'm sorry. As a very fun, brief aside, I didn't want to confuse you with that because, yeah, the satanic forces are far, far from any level of benevolence. If they ever had a necessary role to play in our ecosystem of consciousness, they are far from that at this point. And I hesitate to even share with you that original apocryphal mythology because I don't want you to calibrate to the sense that like, oh, Satan was supposed to have some kind of a purpose and now it's just like way, way, way away from where he's supposed to be. But he is, and it is. Actually, the satanics and all of them are supposed to be going to entropy this fast, not on this very, very slow boat to entropy, but not to get you all confused. So in ancient Egypt, the Egyptian funerary tradition, what they wanted for people who were alive was to be focused on their death and focused on the expectation of their demise and focused on how they could build a future for themselves in an astral afterlife. And that's pretty much what they did with their day. They learned about what they could do to extend their consciousness, and they looked at the wrapping of the mummy as something that was essential to be able to keep them anchored to the world. And it does. When you die, your body doesn't die instantaneously. There is genetic activity on a cellular level for at least 3 days after you are dead. So your consciousness is gone. You have separated your consciousness from the physicality form of your cellular body. But the cells of your body, it's not that they haven't gotten the message. Please know, they are devastated. I know this because I came into this body as a walk-in when the original consciousness was destroyed and the cells of this body were devastated. The cells of this body have been living their life for about 27 years up until that, very harmful moment. And they had the expectation that they were going to keep on living, keep on being alive, maybe even ascend one day and become pure light. And when the previous occupant of this body, her consciousness was destroyed, the cells of the body weren't dead. They were still trying to do their DNA dance. And they were like this. Oh, no, this isn't fair at all. That's the feeling state, not anger, but more a sense of like, oh, that's not fair. That's not fair at all. This is terrible. They felt bereft. They felt grief. They felt grief for their own impending death, because that means that the physicality flesh that had been brought forward and nourished for 27 years didn't get a chance to come fully forward into the potential of accelerating back to pure light. And that is part of what I am here rectifying. So not only serving the trillions of cells of my body that I'm, bringing forward into this acceleration moment of ascension, but bringing together the fabric of space-time that would have been torn apart if this matter of my body and consciousness of these cells did not come forward into the area where they're supposed to be. So I share this with you so that if you consider death, when you do that, you're betraying your cellular body. When you, as the driver of the bus, are like, yeah, well, maybe I'm just going to crash the bus over a cliff. I'll go find a new bus. But the bus, your body is like, hello, I'm right here. Like, don't crash the bus. It is betrayal of the body. And your body hears from you. Your body also hears propaganda from this horrific anti-life force field here. So don't let that be the defining propaganda that your body thinks about what's going to happen in life, because that force field of propaganda just tells people the worst and most corrosive lies about, cellular degradation, decrepitude, and death. But you must talk to your body and you must say, I love you. I am committed to you. Yes, you little cells. I thank you for sustaining me. I thank you for being a house for my consciousness. Let's ascend together. Let's stick together. It is what good waffles do. Stick together like good waffles. When you make these levels of commitment and have these beautiful, somewhat hilarious conversations with your cellular structure, it has a huge impact. Your cells of your body don't give up. They don't poop out. They're like, I'm going to stay alive. For me, I'm going to stay alive. For Aurora, we're going to stay alive together, stick together. And when you look at your body and you celebrate your body in that level of commitment, you move beyond levels of human cultural projection about what is a perfect body or what is a desirable body. Because mostly in your world, especially right now, in such a shallow and corrosive culture, people judge bodies just based upon whether they fit standards of beauty. Like, is the skin color of this body the correct color? Is the car the right color? Does the car have the right mileage on it? Is the right age? Does it have other cosmetic features that are enjoyable? Like, whatever, a nice radio or something like that. As opposed to recognizing that this is your vehicle for being able to carry your consciousness around, and appreciating when you have, I'm going to say, a vintage piece or a museum piece, and to be able to recognize also that you can restore the hardware on your car and make it really nice and shiny again. So even if there's bumps or dents, you can say, I'm going to buff those out. I'm going to repaint it. I'm going to get new headlights. I'm going to do these different things. This is regeneration and restoration. And all of those potentials exist within your DNA, but they have been put into the deep inner resources of DNA as potentials that are unexplored, dormant potentials, because people are busy thinking of their car as a disposable car. So I have been learning all about cars and manufacturing as I learn more about human economy. And I learned that nowadays you're lucky if your car lasts 10 years, and they do not make them to last very long, and they are exorbitantly priced. But cars from 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago were made to last a long time. And they didn't have this sense of planned obsolescence, and people enjoyed buying a car and then maintaining it well and keeping it on the road for a very long amount of time. The difference between expectation between back then and what it is now. So now people think about their bodies as like, oh yeah, you're here, you're gone. You're going to die. You'll be born in a new body or have another level of parallel experience or something like that. And I don't think that's necessarily positive, because a lot of people look at their life and their body as if it's disposable. Like, not only do people do all sorts of terrible scarifications on their body right now in terms of like body modification and tattoos and strange piercings and plastic surgeries and stretchings and lengthenings and whateverings. Like, that's not that positive. But also, so people damage their own car, but also sometimes people damage their own car, this is a big one, through drugs. Kids, don't do drugs. I'm really telling you. Of course, I consider cannabis to be completely different. But please know that these white, powdery pharmaceutical substances are really corrosive to the body. And they're not something to be taken recreationally, and that they have a huge impact on the longevity and ability for your car to keep going. And people look at it as if it's something that has no impact or is of no consequence. And they don't recognize how much it's like putting the wrong gas in the gas tank. Oh my goodness, it corrodes the engine. And then it does make it very difficult for your car to have good longevity. So both, illicit, illegal, recreational drugs, and also many drugs that are prescribed by medical professionals, far against any sensibility or recommendation that I would encourage people to follow. I would not encourage you to follow those medical professionals. I, of course, am not a medical professional at all. I am not a doctor, not even in air quotes. Consider your body to be your vehicle for your consciousness, and that it should last you for hundreds or thousands of years. As I say this, many of you are thinking back to the satanic literature you are familiar with, known as the Bible, first books of Moses. Did she just say the Bible is satanic, girl? Yes, I did. That is correct. It is. It is satanic literature. It is not actually divine literature. But there is some validity in talking about the days before Noah. Noah is the time of the flood. I talk about the antediluvian, pre-flood, sophisticated system of civilization that used to be here. In the Bible, it talks about the time before Noah and how the lifespans were extremely long of those people known as literally the patriarchs, and how things changed after the flood and after the new type of humans who were created in culture afterwards. So it's worth it for you to recognize that, but don't take the Satanic Bible literally. And they do talk about, like, one is a character named Enoch, that he was said to live like 900 years or something like that. And then he didn't die. He just got taken up in a ball of light, kind of like Lao Tzu, taken up in a ball of light. And there's a couple of others. It escapes my mind right now, but there are a couple of well-known originators in the Bible of how long their lifespan was. So yes, now I'll just, instead of using human mythology to relate to, just tell you from the truthfulness of my experience. Yes, when we live in ancient concurrent Atlantis, you can live for hundreds, thousands of years very easily. And not like as a very decrepit old person, whatever, you look like me, you look like yourself for thousands of years. And just mentally try on that outfit for a moment. Be like, what would that be like? How would your behavior change if you didn't think that you would die after 20 or 50, or if you're lucky, 100 years? You'd be like, I'm here for the long haul. You'd be like, well, I'm going to plant a tree, and then I'll come back in 50 years and I'll be able to eat the fruit from that tree. You'd be like, I'm going to make a business investment. And then in 50 or 100 years, I'm going to come and be able to see that this business has grown. or I'm going to build a project that might take me 50 or 100 years, write a book, do any kind of thing that is personal expression of creative artistry that might take you an extremely long amount of time. It's no problem. That's when you really get to the levels of like, you want to make Fabergé egg, and you're gonna take you whatever 100 years to make one perfect sculpture. You do it, and you're like, oh yeah, that I spent 100 years making one perfect sculpture. That's a lifetime to your present mentality, but would be one important chapter and one important accomplishment. And then you would still be here to be able to do that. What would it be like if you could master not only making Fabergé eggs, but also putting in fence posts, creating driveways, learning to care for animals, building civilizations? Like, you would become a super genius. The breaking of your life up into these various different incarnations and having non-continuity of consciousness, it means it's very, very difficult for you to amass your education and hold on to it. Because as soon as you learn something, like, mostly people die, and people don't even live to 100 years, they live like 25 years. Some of these not very well considered people, like, they die when they're 20 years old. They doing dangerous stuff and other things like that. They didn't have a chance to build anything, and then they're gone. You're here today, goon tomorrow. That's from Little Rapid Fufu. Hair today, goon tomorrow. I'm getting a little bit silly, but let me try to stay focused and continue to share for at least another half hour or so. You would be able to become what is known as a super genius just through being able to remember all the things that you've done. So you would not have dementia or cognitive decline, not in any way. Please wipe that as you're beginning to do this. What you're doing right now is some heavy lifting with your mind to reprogram your expectations of what aging looks like. And no, when you age in a healthy way, keep your marbles. You do not lose your marbles. You maintain your intellect. The narrative of dementia and cognitive decline is directly related to the suppression mechanisms that are in your world right now. Some of them are about, the same satanics and transhumanists who are trying to run your world, but it's been going for a long time because the older people in your society are the most powerful people with their minds. So if you can attack their minds through some form of either malnutrition or pharmaceutical drug or in a pollution in the world that affects their minds, then they become infantilized, disempowered, definitely a drain on the younger generations, but also they can't be busy sharing their wisdom. So even right now, like a person who is older than 25 years old can remember when the sunlight looked like the beautiful, gentle, golden yellow sun. And if you are 25 or younger and you're watching this video, please know that what you're experiencing as the giant ball of consciousness in the sky is not the same sun that those people who are decades older than you remember from their childhood, in a time before the pollutions of the atmosphere and beyond, before the technological infrastructure was here that was separating us from the sun. The sun had a magnificent quality that is not evident right now. And it looked different and it felt different in my mind. And it also felt different on my skin. So, but you're like, wait, Aurora, like, you're here from 2001 forward. Exactly. So I don't remember pre-2001, but I remember what it felt like 2001 to 2005, which is before they put up cell phone towers in my area of upstate New York where I lived. And then I remember how the sun changed when they put up the cell towers, but I still could do sun gazing out there. But then I remember how much the sun changed in 2014. And then I remember how much the sun changed in 2017. And then I remember how much the sun changed in 2020. Yeah. And so, not that I'm a wizened old person in any way, but gather around, children, because I can tell you, I remember in my day, Pepperidge Farm remembers. I remember what it felt like before cell phone towers were put up. And I remember what it felt like before all this Bluetooth technology. And I remember what it felt like. Oh, here's a good one. I remember what it felt like before they started to soak all of your crops with glyphosate and to destroy and poison your grain. And just as a brief, very, very brief aside, like, I used to walk through bakeries when I first came here in 2001 to 2005 or so as Aurora. And I used to walk through bakeries just because I like to visit the pastries. I like to smell everything and eat things with my eyes. And it always smelled like life. Like, the fresh baked bread smells like life to me. And then in 2006, a friend sent me a documentary that was all about what they were doing with genetically modifying the corn and then spraying crops with Roundup. And as soon as I learned about that, it was an education to me. I had no idea, guys, of the type of the crap that I was walking into in this world. And I was shocked and appalled. And I was like, they can't do that. That's not right. But as soon as I learned about that, then I stopped exposing myself to those products. And when I would walk through the grocery store, things smelled differently. When I walked down the aisles of the grocery store, instead of it smelling like beautiful fresh bread, it smelled acidic to me. The only analogy that I have is it smelled like an old man's aftershave, kind of like aqua velva or something like that. Not a pleasant smell, something that smelled sharp and acidic and definitely unappetizing. And I could tell even from my five senses, I'm like, yeah, this definitely is not good food to eat anymore. So yeah, children gathered around. I remember when bread and pizza was positive good food to eat and didn't give people stomach aches and destroy the lining of their intestines with chemicals. But that's not what you got right now. So if you never ate a pizza pre-2005, like you haven't eaten pizza, you have not actually eaten pizza. You have eaten glyphosate soaked, genetically modified monstrosity food. And then, whatever with some toppings on top. Yeah, no, and we can do this all day. But there are very many aspects of growing older without cognitive decline that make you a powerful person. Oh, here's a good one. If you, and of course, like I have not flown on airplanes very, very much, but if you are older than 25 years old, you remember flying on airplanes when you could bring your bottle of water with no problem. Bring your bottle of water and your lipstick and your shampoos and all of those things. When they didn't molest you at the TSA to grab your parts and see if you've got any illicit stuff, shoved in your bra or whatever, like the things they do just for air travel these days. You would remember when you still had some basic human rights, when you weren't surveilled at all times. You would be able to remember when phone conversations were actually relatively private and were not being recorded to a giant data center in Utah. You could remember so many things. Yes, of course, our whole entire world would have been different in that time. Yes, you would not have been able to simply buy anything you wanted to buy on the internet. Like if you needed something, you would go to a store, not shop on Amazon. And yes, you could not just do endlessly scrolling through online shopping, if you can't sleep at night and just endlessly scroll and look at online things you can buy. Those things were not available to you in that time. But you could do a lot of things that you can't do now in terms of personal human rights, huge erosion of rights within the past 25 years. So yeah, that makes you a troublemaker. You know why they want to give all the old people dementia? Because these old people are troublemakers. And they'll be like, oh yeah, no, actually the Constitution says you have a right not to be surveilled. They're like, get this guy out of here. Give this guy a flu shot. Like, get him out of here. Totally. Oh, I'm sorry. I probably shouldn't be talking about these things if I want this video to remain. So just pretend I'm not talking about any kind of cupcakes or anything like that. But they do a lot of things to people who are in older medical care situations in order to try to prematurely end their lives. Yeah. And a lot of them have to do with subcutaneous pollutions. And that is because people who have continuity of consciousness are a threat to the regime. And also when you have older people who can amass resources and who aren't living paycheck to paycheck, they also represent a threat to the ongoing regime because they have what is called FU money. Like if you have lived a good life and you amassed, you have your own home and you bought your car 50 years ago and it still runs and you don't have debt and you can do all these different things, then it's like you can be like, yeah, no, like I'm not going to listen to the government. I'm going to grow my food and collect rainwater, drive my 50-year-old car, do all the things I need to do. And, maybe I'll even have my grandkids live on my land with me and help the next generation. None of this happens when older generations go into cognitive decline. Sell off the homestead, grandma and grandpa go into a care home, and then through inheritance tax, the state gets to get 50% when they die after their yearly subcutaneous pollutions. Let me just move on to some questions over here. I'm going to talk more about my actual curriculum. Okay, so wait. I had to scroll a lot. Martin says, so in Atlantis, nobody lost sight of anyone because nobody disappeared, like here now through death? Absolutely. You didn't disappear. So, like, when I ascended in Atlantis, people were not like, oh no, like, Aurora's gone. We're so sad and we're never going to see her again. They watched me ascend like a giant sporting event, and they cheered every time that my light body got bigger. And they cheered every time that I grew and got like more substantial and ready to do this thing. And then I jumped into a higher dimension. And then they could still see that I'm still here, but in a different state as a light body following the sun, similar to the sun bark of Ra, going around and around and around the planet each day. And they weren't cognitively kept away from me either. Like I could see and sense their struggles on Earth or in the physical realm, even while I am doing a lot to maintain reality on the higher dimensional state. But it wasn't like I was like, oh yeah, like, see you suckers. I have no idea what's going on in your life. I'm too busy. I'm over here in my ascension zone, and just deal with your crap. I was like, no, like I stayed mentally connected to their lives and could see and follow up on all the people that I cared about, and they could see me in a higher dimensional state. But I'm at the speed of light. And I can't slow down in order to come and have a cup of tea, even though we didn't have a cup of tea back then. But you understand, like, I could not slow down to socialize and come down to the level of the planet again. So you can still see your friends and family members. They know that they're in existence and they're caring about your life and affecting you, but you don't have a direct interaction anymore. Yeah, but that's a great question. And Elmer says, what is cul-de-sac in FRL dance? Well, a cul-de-sac is a dead end in a suburban street. It usually goes like this, and then it has a round place where you can turn around and go out of there. It's a dead end and a place where you don't want to be. So the membrane of death and some of these spiritual eventualities, I call them cul-de-sac because they're the end result of a series of proposals or calculations that are flawed, that does not actually bring you to consciousness freedom, but it might bring you to a place where you can turn around in circles and get stuck, but then you must exit from that place and return to your mistake point to make a different choice, to then not get stuck in a limited place where you're always turning around in circles. CC Allen, thank you for being here. Says, in the myth of Isis and Osiris, the phallus used by Isis had the shape of an obelisk. Interesting cultural stuff. Thank you for sharing with us. And goes on to say, a divine child, the Horus, was the result of the union. There are obelisks in Vatican City and in Rome, Washington, D.C., City of London, and other places such as Paris and Istanbul. Very, very great cultural information. And thank you for that. And Avril says, I used to work in the Gherkin in London, which is obelisk shaped. Totally. And there's a lot of, so that's interesting stuff. There's definitely a lot of hat tip to ancient Egypt in our present world. And the hat tip is mostly to not pre-Pharaonic Egypt, when things were a little bit more pristine in terms of their spiritual seeking, but Pharaoh Egypt into the more modern day. And what happened was their quest for immortality became horribly corrupt. That the idea, so I wasn't telling you enough about your DNA lasting for 3 days, even as your consciousness has left the building. So when your consciousness leaves your body and your cellular structure is going into entropy and losing energy and losing its life force and awareness, you can still be having cognitive adventures that are pretty much the echoes of who you used to be. And hopefully, whatever adventures a person is experiencing, help them to resolve what they have been through. Like if you have done harm to others, hopefully you're able to come to a recognition of those mistakes and a processing of the emotions. So that way, when you do have your next life experience, if it's reincarnating in the same life but on a different timeline, or reincarnating in a completely different life circumstance, that you're able to learn and grow from the experiences. Sometimes people also need to process not the trauma that they've done to others, but the things that have happened to them. So that's what that time is. That 3-day long interim is really a time of introspection and retrospection and self-consideration. That is the essence of what Judgment City is. It's not actually a lord on a throne, or in ancient Egypt, it was a hall of mat, a place where there is a society that judges you, weighs you on a scale, and determines whether you are worthy of going forward. It really is more a sense of self-assessment. So please file that away in case you ever die. When you're in the Hall of Mat, when you're facing the judgment on high, what you're really doing is facing your own inner assessment. But also please understand that you don't have to die, and I encourage you not to die. And also please understand that everything on the membrane of death at this point is a full-on aberration. Not going to get a fair trial. When you go to the membrane of death, it is largely populated by and run by insane, evil, malevolent echoes of insane, evil, malevolent people. That's what the culture was on Mars. So not a satanic hero who fights the forces of darkness and chaos. The red, scaly guys from Mars, evil, insane, corrupt, and they definitely have set up shop on the membrane of death. And if you die, they're very happy to misportray themselves as if they are your teachers. And they'll pretend to be your spiritual afterlife guides. And they'll pretend to be your psychopath, which means you're Virgil, you're Dante's Virgil. You know what I mean? Like someone who's guiding you through the afterlife and who says, this is what's going on, and this is what this is, and this is what this is. You're really just meeting inmates in the insane asylum. The lower astral is the insane asylum. And what you need to do if you ever die is to get through that zone and not get stuck there. It is the lint trap, the reservoir that collects consciousness and keeps it stuck there so that it can't move on. So in all of these things, what you have as the commonality is good people move on. Bad stuff gets stuck. And bad stuff can be a whole bad organism, a bad person, or a bad characteristic, or whatever, a negative way of doing things or something like that. That stuff gets stuck on the membrane of death because we actually don't want it to propagate forward in time. But good aspects of self, that means they are coherent and life-affirming and worthy of being in existence, do move forward. So let me, one more question from Avril says, statin has certainly accelerated her father's dementia. And yes, you alluded to with my grandfather, annual attempts to end his life. He was a stubborn old man, though. I'm glad that he didn't let the subcutaneous cupcakes try to take him out prematurely. You understand completely. Yeah, and also the previous generations, they trusted medical scientists. They were like, oh, well, if you want to give me these cupcakes, I'll eat these cupcakes. They didn't know that sometimes they put intentional bad sprinkles into the cupcakes that would make a person's life not be very long, because there's a lot of evil that's going on in the world right now. So a lot of this is big error through innocence and ignorance. And if you ever reach the membrane of death and you find out you shouldn't have eaten that cupcake, error through ignorance and innocence. And then you talk to yourself on the other times and say, don't eat that cupcake. It is not going to help you to ascend. And if you listen, then you get to be on the eternal timeline. If you don't listen, then you will have to face the red clipboard of your mistakes. Okay, so wait. Okay. Because I want to look at, respect for ancient Egyptian culture in the modern world, it is largely the corrupt culture of ancient Egypt that got run by corrupt priests. So what happened was they were like, yeah, we all want to live for forever. We want to mummify our corpses so that 3-day period of the DNA is still doing its thing, even while the consciousness is no longer there, lasts longer than 3 days. You've got Tutankhamun in the Metropolitan Museum over there in New York. And his DNA is like frozen, but still gonna move slightly. Like that guy, he is still in his last agonizing moments. That's not necessarily good. Extending that 3-day period into millennia is not the same as eternal life, and it's not the same as freedom. Just as you might think that money will give you freedom, people think that wrapping up their corpse so it doesn't putrefy will give them eternal life, and it does not. That's it. The ancient Egyptians were very, very literal in thinking that preventing putrefaction would bring them to spiritual eternal life. But all it did was it made their culture manic, which means that they only invested in their afterlife, amassed huge fortunes just to be able to spend it on tombs and the special wrappings for mummification. Tomb business and mummification became a big business, and that's where the corruption came in. Come on down to Crazy Eddie's tomberific mummification place where all of your death needs are going to be met. No money down, and pay for your afterlife now. Like, seriously, I am not kidding. They turned it into a whole industry, and that's where the corrupt priesthood comes in, because there were like gods of all these different type of places, and all these different gods and all these different purposes, and all these gods had all these different priests, and all these priests would do all these different mummification things, all in order to try to find some level of eternal life. It was the essence of materialism. They were stuck in materialism instead of moving beyond materialism to be able to be truly free. They were so stuck on their tomb and their mummy that they got stuck instead of being free. So yes, the gold headdresses are beautiful. The artistry done in the tombs of these mummies is incredible. But the souls of the people who are mummified are not necessarily ascended masters because of what they did, but that's what they were hoping for. So a lot of the stuff that your present corrupt level of culture and government acknowledge from Egypt is the corrupt stuff from Egypt, the corrupt priesthood stuff, not the real pure stuff from the less diluted stuff that is closer to the level of Atlantis. So both of these things, the Egyptian Book of Coming Forth in Today and Tibetan Book of the Dead, these are meant to be user manuals for what happens when you die. You've also got that movie Beetlejuice, but do not follow the rules in Beetlejuice. Like, that will not help you across the afterlife at all. Very, very bad, whatever, bad propaganda from Hollywood, because they're a dead couple and they end up getting a book that's like the book of the afterlife and what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do. No, that's definitely the lower astral. They got the book of the lower astral and how to get stuck in the lower astral, not how to be free in any way. So basically what happens when you hit the membrane of death, you continue on as an echo of your former personhood. And your former personhood has some eternal aspects of self and some temporal aspects of self. So temporal aspects of self, that's my dress. It doesn't last for forever. If I was clinging to my dress and I was like, no, this is my eternal aspect of self, I would stay stuck on the membrane of death, because I would be identifying with stuff that is not eternal. But my epidermis, my morphogenic field, who I am as a person, my eternal consciousness and the values of who I am beyond this form, that is eternal. That is what I identify with. That is the eternal aspect of self. So these handbooks for death that people use when they come from these different cultures are meant to guide you, but sometimes they can be misguidance, and it actually is all a moot point at this point, because you're not going to want to die. Let me scroll through some of my notes. Read my notes. They're very, very good. I got that. Crossing of the Duat. You get into the night sky. If you do it correctly, then you join with the greats. All right, let's go a little bit more how to make it successfully through the afterlife. That's pretty much what they learned. And also, when they achieved their afterlife, they would have this after existence that needed to be somewhat sustained by the living. So that was also a big thing. The making of offerings to sustain those who have already passed on. And the living would create food for the dead and then leave it there and not eat it. So the life force essence of the food, like the rice, the grain, or whatever it was, they would leave it on an altar to feed the dead. And Shinto does this also. This is not a religion, but like a philosophy or a respect for the ancestors that people have in Asia. And there's lots of stuff with Hindu tradition. It's not feeding the dead, but it's feeding the gods, leaving offerings of physical foods. And then, of course, there's Mesoamerica and Central America, South America, lots of bloody sacrifices for gods, given life force energy, either from food or from blood sacrifices, to those who either are in afterlife or who rule over the afterlife. In the Mayan culture, it was called Xibalba. And Xibalba is the underworld. When you look at the Milky Way, there is a place of darkness in the middle, and it is kind of shaped like the vaginal canal. And it was called the birth canal, vaginal canal, Xibalba, underworld. And it was ruled over by a series of criminals. If you ended up in Xibalba, you got problems, and you have to learn how to navigate there. I think that might be maybe one of the best navigational instruction manuals because, well, you know something, Bardo Todal is kind of like, don't get snookered. If you, it says you will be presented with a light, don't accept the first light. Like you're going to have to negotiate, kid. Don't go to the first light. Don't go to the second light. Don't go to the third light. You know, wait until a couple of lights come by in order, because is that way you'll get a favorable afterlife of reincarnation. Same thing with like the crossing of the duat, different rituals and remembrances, the songs and things that you learn in your life that you can continue to. I'm going to turn off my light over here. Does it help? It helps a little bit. No, darker. That you can remember, like, you know, commercial jingles or whatever that, or Sesame Street songs, and you die and you still remember those jingles and Sesame Street songs so that they can guide you even while you're going through this time of self forgetfulness. So little tips of the trade like that. But really, the ancient Mayans, I didn't necessarily have a book or something like that, but they taught very much about the afterlife. And they were like, oh, yeah, the lords of the afterlife, they're going to try to steal from you. They're going to try to amputate you. They're going to try to cut off your head and play that little basketball game with your head. Like, don't trust anybody in the afterlife. And they had all of these anecdotal stories about like people that got down into the underworld and how, you know, they almost got fooled and then they got smart and they found their way out. So those are the guiding stories from that culture. All of these myths that I'm giving you are the guiding stories from a variety of cultures who are all the splintered debris of Atlantis that are trying to give you half an effing chance so that if you die, you don't get stuck in a conscience cul-de-sac or being eaten by some demon eternally, and you can make it to where you actually need to go. But of course, you don't want to die. You want to fly in rainbow lasagna. And also, this is not just a mere abstraction for the future. We are ascending literally right now. Like everything I was telling you about 2020 is like we are 5 years late on the Ascension bus. The bus will not leave without you. You are the bus. But you don't have to drive the bus. Drive the bus. It is time to ascend. And so, yes, you can look at these as, you know, interesting stories. But I would encourage you who are in this class to make a commitment to yourself in the expectation of not dying and the expectation of reawakening the genetic architecture of what immortality is inside of you. Human researchers call the control systems telomeres that are like limits to how your DNA can act. But please know that it's 100% full SHIT. Telomeres are not permanent installations at all. And I have been able to change and transform my own body through Flying Rainbow Lasagna as I've been here for, you know, I came in 2001, so I'm here for over 24 years. And I've definitely changed the death expectation of the body and the decrepitude expectation of the body and the disease expectations of the body, and transcended cancer programs and many other programs that are in the body. And I do all of that, and I send out my information to each one of you so that you can use it as a template in your own life. And so sometimes it's just enough for me to say the words to you, like, oh yeah, no, like you're not supposed to die at all. Sometimes I need to tell you stories and help you guys to remember. You're all from ancient Atlantis, first of all. You're all from this shell of reality, and then you're schlumped down into this shell. But no, you're not supposed to die at all. And then giving you the teachings that I can give to you about the diagram of life and death and what is happening when you die or when others die. That also helps you to have a cognitive framework for how to experience death or how to cognitively comprehend what death is. Please also know the planet has a structure like this in time. I need to hydrate. It's very warm out today. Hold on. There are some reality structures where the planet is heading towards death, planetary death, like Mars is dead. Mars did something very bad and Mars is dead. The asteroid belt is dead. Our planet is not going to die. I am here. I make a commitment, just like I make a commitment to this body. I tell my body, don't worry, body, you're not going to die. I tell this planet that all the time. Don't worry, planet, you're not going to die. You guys can make a similar commitment to the planet. Why do I call the Bible satanic literature? There are profound flaws, also because of its origins, also because of the tendency for the Torah to be written as a blood sacrifice on animal skins, but mostly it's because of the book of Revelation at the end that basically says, here's the beginning, birth of the light and life, like let there be light, and here's all the stuff that happened in human history, and then here's death. The book of Revelation, everyone's gonna have to die, and then some of you will go to heaven, and some of you will burn horribly in hell. That is not a good book. That is terrible programming for your expectation of your DNA. It's literally a dark magic spell that activates the expectations in your own body that you will die. It comes from a God who feeds off of death. This is the God that is known as Yahweh and Jehovah. Pardon me for being so religiously offensive. I must be accurate in the things that I say to you guys. This is what the original temple was, a temple for blood sacrifice to be able to feed a bloodthirsty God. This is what modern wars are all about. You will not have a bloody war in Europe. The evil gods that drink blood and the gods of Xibalba that want to play basketball with your head, they are not going to get their bloody shooting war in Europe this year. They want it bad, but they're not going to get it. The financial wizards want it too because they need that to be able to erase and restructure debt and pretend that they actually have money and continue the collective hallucination. If they kill hundreds of thousands of soldiers in Europe, then they'll be able to get enough afterlife, underworld energy to sustain your satanic debt-based hallucinatory fiat money system, and you can continue to live in a dead rotting corpse that is made out of debt and corruption and corporate infrastructure. You don't want that. You don't want any of those things. And I do not consent, and I do not consent for this planet. So no, you will not have a bloody shooting war in Europe. And the evil Logi gods will be very hungry. They'll be like, we're so hungry. Wish we had some blood to drink. I'm sorry. I mock it so that it takes away the power, so that you don't think of them as, big, giant, intimidating, evil things. We're using the spell ridiculous to take the fear away from what you face there. But yeah, no loosh for them. No loosh for them. And you will have a very, very different experience instead on this timeline where you will not die. People in my class, you will not die. You will be able to grow your light body, reconnect to the sun, and not experience this light pollution and false light. You'll be able to connect directly to the real sun again. No more chemtrails, no more of this frequency force field that is a cognitive suppressor and light body suppressor and corrosion in your world. You will get rid of all of that. When you are in the presence of the actual sunlight, you will be, it's what humans, you guys are calling light codes. It activates aspect of your body and awakens dormant DNA so you can rejuvenate. Throw out any stories about telomeres, because those are all false and no longer relevant stories and expectations about what your body is and how your body functions. Just get your body connected to and in the presence of real sunlight, and you completely change and restructure. So I can have one more question. I have something important coming up in about 21 minutes. So I have to conclude class for right now. So if anybody has one more question, going once, going twice, they have to wrap everything up. For anyone who is, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Michelangelo. Anybody who's wondering about my notes, who's not a formal part of my email list for this class, can always find my notes in the PDF called the Flying Rainbow Lasagna Manual for Flight. That's in the description. And also, I know it's been a long class, but if anybody's watching this, I think I have one more spot still open for my upcoming retreat that is now in exactly 1 month away from this time. So I recognize that the payment Deadline is April 15th, so that's in just a couple of days, but I do not have total confirmation from one person who said that they were interested, one applicant who's interested in being there. So if you are interested in being there, contact me immediately and we'll see if we can make it happen for you. Okay. Oh, Suzuki says, does that mean that everyone who doesn't do FRL dance will die? It's a good question. It depends upon whether they can create a viable alternative to death that does not include flying rainbow lasagna. So when I talk about FRL, this is a good question. I talk about it as being a viable pathway where you don't have to die, but not the only viable pathway. So someone out there might be, an amazing super genius, and they might create an alternative pathway that involves their own thing where they don't have to die. I will hold forth that possibility for them, but that's what it would take. So that's also why I make this open source code and work so hard to be able to tell you guys about what FRL is, because it's pretty much, it's one of your only chances to not have to die. And what about, it's quick follow-up question that I could sense from you. What about things that should die? What about things that should die? What if there's an evil, gross, corrupt, horrible, evil loser in the world? And can he fly rainbow lasagna and will he live eternally? And the answer is no. If an evil, gross, horrible loser tries to fly rainbow lasagna and live eternally, the truth of their nature is revealed to them, that most of their characteristics need to go to entropy. Instead of being energized and speeding up to light speed, they go into entropy, which is why I have not had to keep this as a secret and hide it only for those of you who are worthy of ascension. I sprinkle lasagna on everybody's breakfast cereal so that you're all getting lasagna. The ones who are good, like you guys, you're going to energy, and you are entropizing the corrupt aspects of your own nature. Willingly, you're learning and growing, doing your homework, doing a fabulous job. For those who are predominantly 99% evil, crapola, gross garbage, there's not a way for them to accelerate and make it to light speed. The math is simply impossible. So if they get access to flying rainbow lasagna and they start to do this, what it means is it just accelerates their entropy. It means they go to entropy faster, which is actually really good for them. You don't want to go to entropy slow. Like a slow tearing off of the Band-Aid that hurts every single, inch that you're doing it. Definitely not good. Fast Band-Aid, fast. Just tear it off really fast and just go to entropy fast. And that is like the mercy that I can give to these corrupt consciousnesses. This is beautiful. Diane says, thank you, love from Giza. So you're right there in Egypt, connecting with Egyptian soul heritage. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here, Diane. Beautiful. And Pedro says, why love the lasagna, with questions and exclamation points? Like, I don't know if it's a why question. I don't know if I can answer that. Like, why? Why anything? Why art? Why music? Why love the lasagna? I don't know. Cece says, we got that one. We got that one about Horus. Yeah, she just looked up that building and it looks like a lot of things, doesn't it? Maybe it also looks like a male body part. There's a lot of stuff that's not family friendly that we can also talk about. That they were a lot. They were very uninhibited in their expressions, what these gods and goddesses did. Got to wrap it up, guys, because I have important stuff that I have to go and attend to. Thank you so much to everybody who's in this class. Thank you to the people who are able to be here in person. And thank you for listening to me, even when I am wildly away from my curriculum. Thank you for being open to all that I have to share, as I'm really doing my best to be able to give you information that is relevant to what you're presently experiencing and not simply repeat what I've done in previous semesters. So I truthfully hope that I'm able to give you good insight and good guidance for what you're presently going through. And I offer you continued praise and recognition. You guys are the good humans. You're the good guys that found my class and found my work, and that you'll be changing and transforming in positive directions. Cece says, gratitude and much love back to you. Thank you very much. And Suzuka says, thanks, Aurora. You're very welcome, Suzuka. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a beautiful, positive night. Thank you.